Hey, everybody. Welcome. I'm glad that you all are here tonight. We're going to have yet another great late night chat about world events and everything else happening. Here we go.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everybody. So glad that you're here with me tonight. We're going to do yet another great late night chat. The world situation is not good. The war continues, and, we're all trying to take note of the situation. And, I've got plenty to say. It'll follow my standard, my opening remarks, followed by the roll call, and then I'll answer your questions. So if you have something you'd like me to talk about in the second half of our show, send in a question. You can send it. The best way to send it is to buy me a coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin. You can also do a Rumble rant on the Rumble if you're watching on Rumble. You can also cash at me at Caleb Maupin 22. The absolute best way to send your question is to go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Maupin and ask a good question. You can be anonymous on there. You can send it anytime. You can even send it if you're watching this tomorrow or the next day, and I'll answer it in the next stream. People do that all the time. Buy Me a Coffee is the best way to send your questions. They show up. I get them right in my inbox, and I go from there. So that's the best way to do it. As far as announcements, join the Center for Political Innovation. We're doing great stuff, and great things are happening. And I'm going to show you some of the great stuff we've been doing tonight to build an anti-imperialist movement, to oppose war, to build up community. We'll talk about some of that tonight. But other than that, we're following my normal format. First, the opening remarks, then the roll call, and then I answer your questions. So, the war on Iran continues. Iran fires back with its missiles in response to the U.S. attack. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. Now, to be fair, a lot of people may not know what that is. This is a pretty narrow ocean area that oil passes through, right? If oil is going to go through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea, it has to go through this very, very narrow area called the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran, in response to the vicious attack from the United States that murdered their supreme leader, and the bombing and the killing, the bombing of an elementary school for girls that killed over 170 people at least, continuing information about that in response to just this onslaught. They're attacking monuments in Iran right now. They're attacking sites that don't have any military purpose. They're attacking symbols of the Islamic Revolution, etc. In response to that, Iran has shut this down, and the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and the oil markets are screaming. And the price of gasoline is, at this point, it's risen pretty high, and it's going to get worse because a very large percentage of the oil of the world goes through the Strait of Hormuz, and Iran has shut it down, and oil prices are going to rise. And, Iran is putting mines in the Strait of Hormuz to prevent ships from going through. And the USA is fighting with Iranian vessels that are trying to put mines. And it's quite an intense situation. Now, I don't know if people saw, but Donald Trump came out today, just a couple hours ago, and he said the war is pretty much over. And I don't know how that works because you murdered Iran's supreme leader. And they just named a new supreme leader who's his son. Thousands and thousands of people were out in the streets to honor the new supreme leader, to celebrate the new supreme leader who's been selected. And Iran isn't just going to say, oh, you killed our supreme leader. Okay, we'll call it off. No, I mean, Iran has said no more oil. And Iran is ready to fight. I mean, they were willing to negotiate. They negotiated in 2015, gave up almost all their peaceful nuclear energy program. They negotiated even after Qasem Soleimani was murdered, and they were negotiating at the very moment this cowardly assassination of their highest religious and political leader happened. And so Iran isn't just going to call this off, and the United States isn't calling it off. And it sounds like the USA has been trying to clear the Strait of Hormuz. It sounds like Iran has, been fighting them, and people are dying around the clock, and this ugly war is happening. And so I don't understand how it can end. I wish it should end. This is an awful, awful war that never should have happened. It was completely unprovoked. Out of the blue, the USA, and Israel decided to murder Iran's highest, most sacred religious and political leader. And Iran is retaliating. I mean, they're going to have to respond. Now, I want to tell you all, this is quite interesting. So, Glenn Greenwald pointed out, so, thousands of Iranians gathered, just a huge number gathered to honor the new supreme leader who's been chosen, Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of Ali Syed Khamenei, who was just murdered. His son is now the new supreme leader. And the New York Times was there. They have people in Iran, in New York Times. They've got, a couple Iranian reporters. And so they took a picture of the crowd, and it is a real picture. It is a real picture. And social media, I'll just show you. This is the picture of all the Iranians, who gathered to honor the new supreme leader. This is at a time their country is being bombed, right? So even as their country is being bombed, this huge crowd assembles to celebrate the new supreme leader, right? And they've been having almost daily demonstrations to support the Islamic Republic, to denounce the United States, chanting death to America. This is, they're opposing U.S. attack on their country, and the people are rallying around the flag. This is what happens when you bomb a country, right? This is like 9/11 for them. In America, after 9/11, everyone was out there with American flags because we felt we were under attack. Iran is under attack right now, and the people are rallying out there. And even though it's not exactly safe to go outside by the hundreds of thousands they're taking to the streets, but this is the New York Times, right? This isn't fake news. This is the New York Times. But there's been a big social media campaign to try and say that photo is not real, that it's AI generated, it's fake. They don't want people to see this, right? And that Trump supporters, I must say, the people that are blindly supporting President Trump right now, right? There's about three categories in America when it comes to this war. There's 50% of America that just hates Trump, right? And they generally buy into almost all the narratives opposing Iran. They just hate Trump, and so Trump is doing this, and he's doing it in a very erratic and unpredictable and sloppy and heartless, ruthless, Trumpian way. So they oppose it. Well, I'm glad they oppose it. I'm glad anyone opposes this awful war. There's that first group. Second group of people are people that just blindly support President Trump. And that's the group I'm talking about here. But then there's this third group of people like Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others that are like what I call the dissident MAGA. And I argue that they are the most important constituency, the people that wanted Trump because they opposed the establishment, wanted Trump to end the wars, and then when he didn't do it, feel betrayed. And Tucker Carlson is facing a huge campaign against him. They're calling him the most dangerous anti-Semite in America. They're really going after Tucker Carlson because Tucker Carlson is speaking to people that would support this, right? And he's showing them not to support it. And the same for Marjorie Taylor Greene. The same, even Steve Bannon has made some statements about how Trump has now got, Persian nationalists opposing him. So there's that. But among the layer of people, it's about 25% of America that blindly support this war. They live in a fantasy world. They believe that all the Iranians are just dancing in the streets. They're so happy that Khamenei is dead. They believe that, I had a Trump supporter tell us at our protest we did on Saturday that all the Ayatollahs have already fled the country and the new government is coming in. That's absurd, right? That's absurd. I mean, the Islamic Republic is very well intact. They just named a supreme leader. They're shooting missiles at U.S. bases around the region. They're blocking the Strait of Hormuz. The Islamic Republic is still very, very well intact. But Trump supporters don't know that. Just like they thought that all the Venezuelans were just overjoyed that Maduro got kidnapped. They're just convinced, all the Iranians are just dancing in the streets. They're just so happy that Khamenei and the Islamic Republic's already been overthrown. I don't know what they're smoking. I mean, they're just not in touch with reality. And that's why this photo has become, a point of contention, right? There is a big effort to try and get this picture community noted, to try and say that it's AI, to try and say that it is not real. And there are loads of bots all over social media that are just going wild trying to say that this photo that is absolutely real from the New York Times was an absolutely real gathering. There's video trying to say it's not real. And it's real. And it's obviously real, and you can fact check it, and you can see many different news agencies that were there and filmed this demonstration from many different angles. This happened. But yet, there's a big campaign of bots, that are trying to say it's false. And there is a big campaign to try and say it's not real. And that the people that do support this war, the blind Israel supporters and the blind Trump supporters that just think that somehow murdering the supreme leader was a good thing, they are determined to live in their fantasy world where everyone in Iran is just overjoyed that the country is being bombed. And it's really, really tragic. And this is a real photo, and you think if some foreign country were to come to the United States and kill one of our most beloved leaders, don't you think there'd be thousands of Americans piling into Times Square and piling into Washington, D.C., waving the American flag? I mean, as much as I do admire the Islamic Revolution as an anti-imperialist revolution and stuff, I mean, it's just common sense. If you did this to any country, they would do this. Any country that's under attack would respond by rallying around the flag, supporting their government, supporting their military, and wanting to fight off the country that attacks them. And, people generally used to understand this, but, it seems like a lot of the Trump supporters have just regressed back to the Iraq war days where, Bush invaded Iraq and, they were all going to be throwing flowers. They were all just so happy. And he was doing it to give the Iraqis a chance at freedom. Trump said recently, as I mentioned, that the war in Iran is coming to an end. However, we heard members of Congress today saying that the USA is moving towards sending ground troops and actually having a ground invasion of Iran. Well, that doesn't sound like it's ending. I don't think a ground invasion of Iran is happening because you can't do that in one day. That requires moving thousands of people to the region and preparing them to go into the country. And I don't think that's going to happen because we're not seeing a mobilization for that. But I also don't know how this ends. Iran has to fight back. Iran has to defend itself. And Iran can't just come back to the negotiating table after you murder their supreme leader in a cowardly way like this. They have to respond. So, I look at this whole situation and I don't know what happens next. And I'm just as worried as you are. And, I just don't know what happens next. I will say that I did go to a gas station in Brooklyn. I think I can show this on here. This was the story I did for RT at a gas station in Brooklyn, where I interviewed people about the gas prices, because gas prices are high and expected to rise. There was kind of a dip when Trump said that the war is almost over, which means somebody seems to believe him. But how is it almost over? I don't get it. So, if I don't know what's going to happen next. I really don't. And this is a very, very dangerous situation. Yesterday, I did go on another Iranian YouTube channel and give this anti-imperialist analysis. Shout out to Faoud. And I'm glad I went on there, and it was good to engage and speak to the Iranian people. And I speak for the majority. Often I don't speak for the majority of Americans. Often I do speak for an activist fringe. Not now. This time I'm in the majority position. Americans don't support this war. But anyhow, this is the story I did for RT yesterday.
That his generation, quote, understands this fight. However, Americans from coast to coast are questioning why it was necessary to attack Iran, as the threat of another forever war undermines the economy and affects the lives of ordinary citizens. RT's Caleb Maupin brings us more from New York.
Since the United States launched its war against Iran, gas prices have been soaring. The national average at this point across America is $3.48 per gallon. That's a 16.6% increase since the United States and Israel killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. Now, Donald Trump says it's worth the cost, a small price to pay.
Short-term oil prices, which will drop rapidly when the destruction of the Iran nuclear threat is over, is a very small price to pay for USA and world safety and peace. Only fools would think differently.
Now, Donald Trump says it's all worth it, and he's got a plan. So we decided to ask Brooklyn residents here in New York City at this gas station whether or not they're ready to trust the plan or whether these spiraling gas prices have got them worried.
Oh, it's very expensive now.
Yeah. Is it going to affect you personally?
Yeah, it does.
How?
Because I work as an Uber driver. Yeah, I'm going to need gas every day, so it's going to affect.
It hurts us all. Whether we're here in the United States or we're abroad, it's going to hurt us all and it's going to affect us all.
I come from a long place. I come from upstate New York. So I got to pay. It's high.
Trump says it's worth it to fight Iran. Do you buy that?
No. He's benefited himself. The rich always get richer and the poor always got to pay for it.
Yeah, it affects everyone, not personally, everyone. Work, everything. That's crazy. It moves everything.
Listen, that's just a distraction from the files. 1,000%.
Everything is going up, the food, the gas, and he's doing it for his benefit, not to help others.
Trump says it's worth it to fight Iran.
It's not worth it at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Who's he doing this for?
Supposedly us, but I don't think so. I don't know. He's probably doing it for oil.
Yeah. Now, the Iranian foreign minister has insisted that they have no interest in harming ordinary Americans, that this violence is on the hands of the United States and Israel with their reckless war.
Iran does not want to harm ordinary Americans who overwhelmingly voted to end involvement in costly foreign wars. Blame for surging gas prices, costlier mortgages, and pummeled 401ks lies squarely with Israel and its dupes in Washington.
So how do New Yorkers feel about the events of last week?
I think it's a stupid war. I think absolutely. That doesn't have any sense. Always in America go so many wars for no reason.
Iran said they should call it Operation Epic Failure.
I mean, listen, Trump's presidency is an epic failure. I mean, we just are distracted from all this, so we just got to keep our head clean and just see what's actually going on. All we could do is just promote what's actually going on, and all this war, all this, United States and Israel action going on. This is all our generation. We just have to speak up about it.
A small price to pay, huh? Well, at this point, polls show that Americans overwhelmingly oppose the attack on Iran. Even some of Donald Trump's strongest supporters don't buy the idea that it was somehow urgently necessary to protect the country. So the question now is, why is it that a war that is so unpopular and so widely opposed is being allowed to go on in a so-called democracy? Caleb Maupin, RT, New York.
What's happening?
Yeah. So that was my report, and I mean, we'll see what happens next, in terms of the gas prices and all of that. And we are going to continue to be out in the streets. We had a National Day of Action, February 28th, for no war on Iran, and our members have continued to protest. And this next thing took me by surprise, but in a way, I'm not surprised, because our LA group, the Los Angeles Center for Political Innovation, they are really amazing and dedicated. They go out every weekend. They are out there. They are in the streets of Los Angeles, with signs, with leaflets, information about our 4-point economic plan, talking about a government of action that'll fight for working families, talking about no war with Iran, no war with Venezuela. So they just happened to be out in the streets at the right time, that they got included in a video that was on a rather large YouTube channel. This YouTube channel is called Really American, and I believe it's affiliated with the Democratic Socialists of America. This guy who is named Kenny, I guess, who works with this Really American YouTube channel. That's the YouTube channel. It's quite a big channel, over 1 million subscribers. As a gimmick, right? He heard the report about how some of these army pastors were calling it a war of Armageddon or a holy war. So this guy Kenny, who is on the YouTube channel, he decided to dress up like a crusader, like a holy crusader from the medieval times, right? And ask if people were interested in joining the holy war. And it was kind of a gimmicky video that he did, which I thought was great. You know, it was a great commentary, because the idea, yeah, we're going to have a holy war against, you know, it's good commentary. But in the process of going out there, he also ran into our members. And I think that's great. So this is Kenny's video. Shout out to Dan from Center for Political Innovation, Los Angeles, who's in the video. And it shows that we're out there. We're with the people. So here we go. This is the video from Really American. Here we go.
The dumbest thing I've ever fucking done. You support the Holy War? Actually, I'm supporting Iran. Holy War. It's a term you probably haven't heard recently unless you're a history major or a cosplaying crusader.
We are honored to come before your presence today, lifting up the arms of our president.
But recently, the term has been launched back into vogue like a missile as the American public struggles with yet another war in the Middle East. And the Trump administration and top military officials who launched the war seemingly struggle to pick a coherent justification out of a hat.
No one seems to have a clear plan for the war or even a clear reason why we started it. And apparently America's military is even at risk of running out of weapons.
But earlier this week, the World War III marketing department truly struck gold with their first ironclad defense of murderous regime change in the Middle East. Namely, it's all part of God's plan.
God's plan. God's plan.
You see, some buzzkillers over at the Military Religious Freedom Foundation claim they've been inundated with more than 200 calls across dozens of military installations from service members reporting that their commanders have invoked extremist rhetoric of Christian Zionist messianism when justifying the unprovoked war on Iran. One military commander reportedly told his combat unit, quote, "President Trump has been anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark his return to Earth."
Sick. So I decided to patronize my local Spirit Halloween to get into the holy spirit of it all and sign up for the righteous cause.
Oh, thank you. What is that? But I was about to find out that signing up for Donald Trump's holy war might not be as easy,
let me in,
or as morally righteous as I've been led to believe. Out of courtesy for the service members, and unlike other super serious independent journalists,
surely you don't think a daycare should just be unlocked. You shouldn't be able to just walk into a daycare.
It should be a reception.
No, every daycare is locked.
Okay, you bring up a fair point.
We decided to respect their wishes not to be filmed, but they informed me they weren't at liberty to discuss the holy war, and I got the sense that none of them were true believers like our incredibly religious military leaders and president. And that got me thinking, if the rank and file weren't on board with the holy war, maybe this war wasn't God's plan to bring on Armageddon and Jesus' comeback tour. Maybe I'd been duped. And right then, as if by divine providence and completely unscripted, I stumbled upon a group of paid leftist agitators. Could this be the sign I was looking for? If I couldn't convert the rank and file soldiers, perhaps I could convert these heathens.
Do you support the Holy War? Actually, I'm supporting Iran. Do you support the Holy War, sir? No? Do you support the Holy War?
But boy, did I have my work cut out for me, because these heathens were down bad.
Sir, do you support the Holy War?
No, I don't.
And why is that? Why not?
I'm a secular person, you know.
A heathen. Your shirt says no war with Iran.
Right.
You don't agree with the Holy War?
The Holy War
based on you talking about Islam versus what?
Well, what I'm referring to is the justification that's being used by a lot of top military officials who are saying things like this war is God's plan to bring on Armageddon, the second coming of Christ, and it's their moral justification for why we are at war with Iran. You don't support that?
No, I mean, that sounds like mental illness to me.
Do you support the Holy War?
What is the Holy War?
It's the justification using God and the Armageddon and the second coming of Jesus Christ to justify invading Iran with Israel.
No.
Why not?
Because you shouldn't use God's name in vain or for war.
Interesting. I never thought about it like that. Why don't you see this holy righteousness as adequate moral cause to invade a foreign country and murder people and do regime change in the Middle East?
Well, first of all, you know, I'm a preacher's kid, and I was raised that you love your neighbor as yourself.
Well, I think that's how the Bible says it, but I don't know if that's what they mean.
My name's Andre, and I'm running to be mayor for Los Angeles in this 2026 Los Angeles municipal elections.
Wow, okay. And Andre, do you as a mayoral candidate support the Holy War?
No, I don't support any kind of Israeli state wars, especially against the vulnerable people of Palestine, or especially against any of our other brothers and sisters in the Middle East. You know, because look, those people have a right to their own independence, to their own sovereignty, but it needs to be on their terms, right? We need to support them in that in any way we can, but we shouldn't be sending boots on the ground. We can send supplies and moral support and get the UN involved and have this be an international effort. But I don't think that it helps any of us to send actual American state, troops on the ground to these places.
The libtards I spoke to were making some good points, and I had to admit I was starting to fall prey to some of their propaganda.
The U.S. and Israel continue to demonstrate that the real threats to the Middle East are Zionism and imperialism. Shame! Shame! The United States is going to war for the interests of the corporate elite.
I don't know, man. These people are starting to make some good points.
After all, if this war was God's plan, why were so many people so upset about it?
People on both sides are not happy. It doesn't matter if you're Democratic, Republican, moderate, nobody's really satisfied. And even though we're divided on the issues, it's obvious that there's a problem in this country. At the end of the day, we're a country of laws, and we have a constitution that says for war, you need approval from Congress. We have not had congressional approval. And look, if the American people support the action, then it can go to Congress, and the people can vote on it, and their representatives can vote on it. But and as far as I'm concerned, there hasn't shown any amount of unilateral or broad support from the people of America. So why are we sending our people, our military service men and women? Why are we sending them there?
What do you think is the actual root cause of this war? Why do you think they're doing this?
Well, I think their ultimate goal is to control the world. I mean, again, and try to find a way to base it on Holy Scripture.
Do you think that this war was perhaps being used as a distraction from anything?
Bro, everything is a distraction.
From what?
Bro, I don't want to say too much, guys.
You can say Epstein files on the internet.
But these people think that it doesn't matter if people die. I mean, they don't care if children die. I mean, look at Epstein.
Yeah.
They don't care what happens to children. This is the same thing in Palestine. We bombed a school, or we bombed a hospital. Oh, well.
I was surprised to find myself agreeing with these people. Their radical left-wing ideology of focusing on domestic issues and strengthening community was starting to sound not so radical.
Things are horrible now in the U.S. Yeah. I'm not denying that. But the thing that I've always had an issue with, even with people in media, is that if you're going to identify the problems, that's great. But you need solutions like mass mobilization to rebuild the country.
Like a manifesto.
Public ownership of natural resources, or public control of central banking instead of private banks for profit, and an economic bill of rights like FDR proposed in 1944. Those are real solutions that can be implemented with a government of action for working families.
All I know is we got to do something. We got to volunteer. People, you got to volunteer. Show up to an organization. Practice nonviolent civil disobedience. Please vote. Vote, 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 and end all wars.
And what would you say to people who think this sounds like you're trying to make Los Angeles into a socialist hellscape like Zohran Mamdani's New York?
Oh my God, God forbid we should be thinking about social people. Are we not a social species? Do we not like being social? Are we No, I believe that, you know what, look, I am a social capitalist. That's what I call myself.
Sure.
Social first. I believe that capitalism has a time and a place for the things we don't need, luxury goods, handbags, and luxury sports cars and whatever. That capitalism all day. But for the things we need, like public transit, schooling, housing, access to nutrition and healthcare, right? Transportation, these things, people should always have a dignified public option. Social first, capitalism second.
Organize your workplace. Join a labor union. It is time for labor unions to build their own institutions, practice mutual aid, buy out rent-controlled properties, and turn them into housing cooperatives and community land trusts to build affordable housing in our communities. Union-owned co-ops, cooperatives are the future, people. Hello. So that's what we got to do.
Folks, I may be being converted to leftism.
In an ironic twist of fate, I'd had a come-to-Jesus moment and decided to lay down my arms where it all began. My time among the heathens had made me rethink the morality of the Holy War altogether, but perhaps the real crusade was the friends we made along the way.
And for our heathen viewers who may agree with you, where can they find more information or support your campaign?
Yeah, you can check me out at Andrej4LA. That's A-N-D-R-E-J. There's a silent J at the end of my name. It's Ukrainian. Yeah, our family's Ukrainian. So it's A-N-D-R-E-J, the number 4, LA.com. Also on Instagram at Andrej, A-N-D-R-E-J 4LA.
And if there are any insane heathens that are watching this video and agree with you, where could they find more information about such an organization?
No, I hope they wouldn't be insane, the heathens. It's CPIUSA.org. It stands for the Center for Political Innovation. Okay, we also have a YouTube channel as well, Center for Political Innovation. You can find morning messages there. I tend to post inspirational or educational or political things there.
Yeah.
And you can see the whole vibe and see what we're all about.
Hey guys, check out In the Streets LA for real people, real stories, no filter. We're going to talk about everything and talk to everybody in LA.
They say war never changes, but the incredible people of Los Angeles proved to us during the making of this video that maybe we can be the change we want to see in the world. And that is a morality that, frankly, I can get behind. Thank you all for your support and for watching. Let us know if you'd like us to do more Man on the Street videos like this here on the Really American channel. And as always, all the links for any information talked about in this video will be in the description below. For Really American, I'm Kenny Hess. I'll see you guys in the next one.
I thought that was great. And they let us read the 4-point plan. And Dan did a great job in the video. And this is the channel Really American. That was Kenny Hess from Really American YouTube channel. He did a great job. And Dan is in the chat right now. And yeah, he did a great job. And I thought that was great. I think it's great. And I'm really, really glad that, the LA folks, they are out there every day. And, every so often something like this can happen, and it's important. That's why you got to be there, right? If the LA folks were not go and out in the streets, they wouldn't have been in this video. They would have, if they just stayed home on their computer, they might have left some comments or something. But I'm really glad that they were there. Great work, Dan, and great work to everyone who was there with you in LA, to Ishmael, to Tim, to Patrick, the whole crew out there. We got a good crew of people out in LA that are very, very dedicated. I'm going to be headed out to LA at some point in the next few months for a workshop, and I'm looking forward to it. And thanks to Kenny, for making a good video. It's kind of edgy, right? Dressing as a crusader, that brings up a lot of pain for a lot of Islamic and Arab people. I mean, the Crusades were pretty bloody events. George W. Bush, when he called the war on terror a crusade, that pretty much alienated the Muslim world. But in this case, we're saying we don't want a crusade, and it was kind of sarcastic, and it was clever, and he got to put on a costume and make a point. And I thought it was a great video. It was a great video. And I liked overall the message was we need to be in the streets. We need to do something about it, right? And the one guy was running for office. We CPI, we have our 4-point plan, and we're building a movement. And Dan did a great job reading out our 4-point agenda, and the guy seemed to like our 4-point plan as well. The other guy was promoting worker cooperatives, and I'm not against that. That's a good thing, right? I'm all for people having more say and in their workplace and things like that. Overall, it was a great video, and I appreciate it. And maybe, this awful war, maybe there's a minor positive that can come out of it, which is that some of the mainstream left can just get their senses back. right? Because what we say as CPI, we're this is pretty standard. We want to end the wars. We want a government of action that fights for working families. And for too long, the left has made it impossible to talk that way, right? And now maybe this war and the public opposition and Trump being the one who does it and all of this will, maybe now the left can, and who knows? We're not left and we're not right. We are neither. We are optimistic and we are hopeful. And part of why we don't fit in is we're not negative. We don't focus on negativity. We're trying to focus on our optimistic vision, and we're trying to build a community centered around our unique understanding of the human spirit and what it is, the creative power that defines human beings. And that's our perspective called innovationism. And we are the center for political innovation. So I think it's really great that we could be featured in this video on a channel that has 1 million subscribers. And, their focus in the video was correct and on track. This is very hopeful and great work, Dan. You represented us and the movement very, very well. You were speaking for all of us, all the hundreds of CPI members out there. You represented us to a broader audience. And Kenny was nice enough to even link the CPI website on his on the YouTube channel description, which was very excellent and very appreciated. And when we put this video on the CPI YouTube channel, we did the same. And we will work with anybody, right? If you are in agreement with us about ending wars, if you're in agreement with us about the 4-point plan, we will work with anybody, right? Now there, internet mudslinging, it happens and it's not pleasant, but we will work with generally anybody, because it's about building a movement. Folks, the Center for Political Innovation is amazing. It is my home. It is my community. It is a great place. And, we have this booklet that kind of documents our activities last summer with the 7-day program, with the convention. And, it's just full of pictures of all the great stuff that went on and, all the speeches that were given. And, you can look, this is the convention proceedings booklet, which we gave out to everyone who came to the January event. It's just really, really beautiful. And then today I just clipped together, I've been using the This Little Light of Mine song, but I updated it. I did an updated video of This Little Light of Mine showing CPI activities around the country. This is our community. This is what gives me a reason to wake up in the morning. This is what keeps me going, is that we got a community of people that are dedicated to building a new America beyond imperialism. This is CPI. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Yep, that's us, the Center for Political Innovation. And mark your calendar, we're having the National Convention on August 15th in the Chicago area. Very exciting. And we're going to have the 7-day program for members August 12th to August 19th. So mark your calendar and join us. Last year, we had 22 people at the 7-day program. Our goal this year is 30 for the 7-day program. And we're going to fill up the auditorium for our convention on the 15th. Probably going to have some great guest speakers and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, join CPI, go to the website and become a member today. We need members to do what we do. We're not in this to be negative, and we're not in this to build an internet fandom. We're building a real group that's out there organizing around our vision of a new America. And you ought to become a member. And we were out in the streets opposing the wars. We were out in the streets opposing the wars, and we got noticed by a big YouTube channel, which is great. And, this is just a little victory. We have done so much. We led the U.S. delegation to the World Youth Festival, where 2 of our members, myself and Noah, got to speak with the Russian president. That was pretty cool. We've had UN press conferences that we've done. We've done quite a lot as a group because we're serious, right? And because we are really, really committed to anti-imperialism. And right now, I mean, opposing this war around Iran is a big focus of what we are doing. And so, that's what we're doing. And so I hope that you will become a member and get involved because it's a lot of fun. We have fun, right? While we do it, we have fun. We get to know each other. And that one thing that is true is that a lot of times people who get into this kind of politics feel isolated and they feel alone. And I think it's really important that you are able to connect with other people and that you're able to put this politics into practice. It doesn't just become a way to feel justified in your isolation. Because for a lot of people, it is just, they sit behind their computer and they adopt, an illiberal ideology as a way of defining themselves online, but it doesn't really mean anything until you put it into practice, right? And so as you join CPI, you will learn. And I am deeply thankful for the fact that as flawed and messed up as the groups were, I was involved in some communist groups, and they taught me to do outreach and sell newspaper on the streets, and they taught me to engage with people. And if it hadn't been for that, I wonder where I would be. I really, really, if it wasn't for activism and being involved in the struggle and learning to carry out operations, to put on demonstrations, to do leaflet distributions, to do book sales and newspaper sales, and go on international delegations, to do disruptions and disrupt events. If it wasn't for the training I got from the revolutionary movement and being an anti-imperialist activist in the communist groups I was around, I don't know where I would be, right? And I see a lot of younger people now who are very lonely and they're very miserable and they're very isolated. And, I am, my life isn't perfect. I can always complain about something, but I've got a pretty good life now. And, I work in international media and, I'm married, happily married. My wife and I just took a walk through my neighborhood in the warm weather and ate some nice ice cream. And, I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for being part of an activist community. Now, one thing that I am clear about, though, is that we need a socialism and an anti-imperialism that is not based on conflict and is not based on resentment and is not based on rage and conflict. We need an optimistic socialism. And that actually kind of brings me to something. So if you all are familiar with these streams, one thing you'll know is that there's an very obscure British composer that we play on these streams called Cornelius Cardew. And I have actually been reading this book that he wrote, Stockhausen Serves Imperialism. And it's interesting because I read like a document that floats around the internet by him that has the same name, but this is different. This is actually the pamphlet version that was published in the 1970s. Basically, Cornelius Cardew was a famous experimental composer. He was part of the Scratch Orchestra. He worked with John Cage and some other very famous experimental composers. And he decided that he was a Marxist-Leninist and a communist. And so he broke away from the Scratch Orchestra and he formed People's Liberation Music and the Cultural Workers Association. And after that, all the music that he composed and played had a very, very Marxist overtone to it. And I play the music on these streams because I enjoy how the lyrics have very intense Marxist concepts crammed into them, and it's kind of hilarious. And I play it on these streams because I appreciate there's just a kind of optimistic tone that flows through it, even though it is Marxist music, right? It's still got this hope that just flows through it. And it reminds me of the music that they play on North Korean radio. If you listen to North Korean state media, they tend to have, they had the electric orchestra, or they have like hopeful kind of music, right? Optimistic music, right? It kind of reminds me of some other music that I've heard in religious communities and other places. And so I've been enjoying reading Cornelius Cardew's writing about music, and in it, he actually gives a brilliant explanation. I guess I'll just read to you this paragraph where he's critiquing mainstream culture and why mainstream music is negative, right? And he's describing the mindset of the ruling class. And he says, With the gradual breakdown of the capitalist world during the 20th century, the future life of the bourgeoisie, the preservation of their ill-gotten wealth has become one incredible mass of problems for them. This is seen in personal anxiety and neurosis due to alienation, the pressure of the rat race, and the now growing sense of guilt, or to be more accurate, fear of the precarious affluence of a small class in a sea of world poverty. A world of growing unrest, communist subversion, revolution, and national wars, and the threat of a third world war from which they know they could not survive. As all political efforts fail to check this collapse, the bourgeois ideologists, so-called economists, social scientists, and other experts are busy constructing Malthusian theories of doom, reducing man to a lemming-like creature. Does this sound familiar, folks? Does this sound familiar? Reducing man to a lemming-like creature to set about his own destruction. In this way, they try to make universal the approaching doom of capitalism and transform it by an academic conjuring trick into the doom of the entire world, or at least the civilization as they would have it. That is what I've been trying to tell you guys on these streams night after night, and he spells it out on here. Their system is dying. They're not going to be at the top of the world anymore. The new world, rooted in 20th century revolutions, the Eurasian superpowers, Russia and China, the new BRICS economy is rising, and they're not going to be at the top of the world, and they're feeling hopeless and pessimistic, and they promote and amplify art and culture that makes you feel hopeless and that views human beings as just another animal, etc. And in order to counter that, we must put forward art and culture that celebrates humanity and makes people love each other and love the human race and feel hopeful and optimistic about building a movement. That's what we need to do, right? And that the reason I like Cornelius Cardew's music and the reason that, that it hits home with me is because it is reflecting a sense of optimism and pushing back against the Malthusian pessimism of the ruling elite of our time. So I wanted to just show on here, this is about 15 minutes from a little documentary film about Cornelius Cardew, the composer. I just wanted to show it. This is, this is a documentary called The Content of Our Song that's posted various places on YouTube. So it seems to be in the public domain, fair use. And this is about Cornelius Cardew. And, he died very tragically in 1981 in a car accident. He was hit by a car. And I guess according to this documentary, he even did prison time at some point. But this shows his organizing and how he and his fellow musicians that were part of this communist group in Canada, they were out in the streets promoting their message. So I want you to see this because what I like about it is it shows actual activism taking place. Cornelius Cardew was a composer, and he didn't get along with John Cage. Dan said, I always thought that John Cage was overrated. Aaron Copland and Leroy Anderson are my happy music. I love Aaron Copland. I could listen to Aaron Copland all day. That's a whole nother story. But so this is showing that this is the part of the film that talks about when Cornelius Cardew became a political activist.
Everything affects a musician, especially like the state of the world it is today.
There is only one light, there is only one truth. There is the lie of revisionism and opportunism of all youth, the lie of imperialism and reaction. And there is the truth of Marxism and Leninism, of revolution and socialism. There is only one light, there is only one truth.
Arrived in Toronto in all of its autumnal splendor in the beginning of October, and we were unsure about what would happen, how things would go. We didn't know the Canadians, we didn't know the musicians or the poets or anything. And the plan was to work together on some joint work. The entire concert was made up of new things, produced from the beginning of October to the 7th, which was the first concert. And Hardy Baines, who was mentioned earlier, was always inspiring and enlightening in this process. So what was produced was a songbook, which I have a copy of. And there were, in fact, 78 poems published in this. Cornelius, transcribed all of the songs that appeared in it. And in fact, 35 of the poems were set to music.
There amongst these fighters, you will find my boat. La Colombie britannique, do you call it les droits de l'homme? On our shores, organized and hammered out the objective laws, propelling history. Dog fight among the rich, exploit all the workers, make money from pitch. You can go back to the land. You can turn on or tune in or drop out, live on 7th Avenue.
Tours being a complete whirlwind of ideas, new ideas, but also a whirlwind that's actually travelled, thousands of miles all over Canada. So, we would be rehearsing, like an overnight car trips over the prairies and things, rehearsing the new songs. And then
he drove all over Canada. He moved from Britain to Canada to set up this revolutionary music group, and they drove all over the country, overnight car trips, to sing these revolutionary songs. You're going to see him in action here. I find this fascinating. This is real activism.
We did get some sleep when we got up for breakfast with being new poems are set. In fact, I remember one of someone's poems that I was setting, Hardy Old Brains actually suggested, that made a few suggestions, almost like a musical. Why not use a musical style?
And as far as telling stories about Cornelius and his life is concerned and so on, the most important thing which I found about him was this social side, that he was one in all situations with everybody. When the concert was given in Toronto, there were night before there was nothing, and how a performance is put that evening. We did have performance. It was for 3 hours, and people did applaud. All these are the concrete facts. So if you don't have that social side, and it's not just Cornelius, I found the comments from Britain all very precious in this respect.
British working class, you have a fine history. There's battles waged against the vicious enemy with great determination. British working class aspires to revolution in the face of attempts to crush this aspiration of socialism in Britain. Light is shining in the sky, heralding the dawn of a glorious new day. British working class, your revolutionary force to build our socialist life.
We have no false euphoria or expectations of any victories in relation to the grave problems which confront the people, or the difficulties to be overcome, and the sacrifice which has to be made. But neither are we pessimistic or fatalistic before the attempts of the ruling class to inculcate an atmosphere of fear and powerlessness in the face of the onrush of racism, fascism and war. The very fact that the British and other reactionary powers have racism as a preferred policy, are developing fascism and preparing for war, shows not their strength, but their weakness in the face of their deepening crisis and the rising struggles of the people.
So yes, so once you listen to the sort of opening address of the June the 7th conference, which catalogues what was going on in the country at the time. Yeah. So the level of racist attacks, the attacks from the organised fascists, the Deptford firebomb, the actions of the government, both in terms of attacking immigrants, attacking national minorities in general, and the Nationality Act or Nationality Bill as it was then. So you have a whole kind of catalogue of the attacks that were going on. And you can kind of see the level that things are at. But also you see the sort of level of the parties organising and the politics that it was putting forward to deal with the threats as they existed. So both kind of bring back the intensity and political level and political consciousness that existed there. And so I think that makes it particularly powerful.
See, they're walking through the streets of a neighborhood, right? And you can hear him they're on the bullhorn saying, "Stand against the imperialist warmongers." And they're handing out leaflets to people in the neighborhood.
What came to my mind when I was listening to it was like just a vision of the intensity of what we were doing, out on the streets, as you were saying, out on the streets, dealing with the racist attacks, campaigning against the government and explaining to people. And I just remember the intensity of those days, and also the sense that the main thing we were immersed in was what we were doing to change the situation. It wasn't like a sense of oppression at these things happening, because we were, so immersed in actually day-to-day battling it.
It was really almost every moment.
The same thing that CPI does. We're out there with our bullhorn. We're out there with our program. And that's the only way to not lose yourself. That's what she's saying in the video, is that when you're actually involved in struggling against this injustice, it doesn't feel disempowering, because you're actually involved in fighting for what's right. And that's really, they want everyone just alone and isolated and watching the world go in a bad direction and feel awful about it. But when you're involved in building a movement to change things, and you're out there engaging with people who would never go looking for this and explaining to them not how to be upset, but a vision you have of a whole new world, it's a very glowing and happy and inspiring feeling.
Every day was the engagement with the struggle, and the need to be conscious of that and consciously active, and to feel that sense of unity with other members of the party at the time, and members of the community gave a great deal of energy. In fact, I used to find these little fragments, like on the back of a bus ticket, few little notes, and certainly when he was in prison, he's hard to get hold of paper. So he said he'd play the organ so that would allow him to play, yes, but also to get paper.
So he was in prison. It doesn't say why. I don't know why Cardew was in prison, this composer, but he was in prison for his activism, I assume. And while he's in prison, he can't get any paper. So he agrees to be the organist at the jail, and he plays the organ in the jail, and that's his way to get paper so he can write. Wild.
Prayer sheets. And he composed on the back of those.
There he is being arrested. Look at that.
Whilst he was inside. I remember when he came out, I went to meet him because I was going to work, but he came out early, and he'd asked me to bring some papers with me. And he was released at the same time as 2 Iranians. And he wanted the paper for the Iranians. Yeah. So he was already working. He hadn't put one foot outside, and he was already, his mind was there. It was a task to be done. And, we had a brief breakfast, and he was off. Just boundless belief in what he was doing and what the party was doing, rather than him himself, and incredible attention to detail as well, and a huge kind of drive to try and enthuse people. That was the other thing, to try and lead them. He really felt the need to lead, I think. not again really about him, but about just such a strong belief in the party and that, you know, we were going to change things, that it was possible.
At last in each country produces diamonds so bright, its best sons and daughters who are prepared to give their life to building the party of the working class, to lead the broad masses in the revolutionary fight. The Revolutionary Communist Party of Britain, Marxist Leninist, is the head to direct the blows of the working class's clenched fist.
He used to agonise about things often. He'd rewrite, you know, he'd write and rewrite, and yeah, no, I don't think he was always so relaxed.
What sort of things did he used to agonise over then?
Well, I mean, I can certainly think about it in musical terms. Because I knew, you know, when, for instance, a certain passage of something he wasn't happy with, he'd hammer at it, you know, he'd be over and over and over it, and then leave it, and then be back again, you know, come in from something and just spend 10 minutes at it again. You know. So, but also I think, you know, talk, speeches, how to say something the way that he really wanted to say it. And probably also through interaction with, you know, writing, and then it's looked at, and then you rethink it, rephrase it, because it's not a solo piece.
Yeah.
This is the work of the party. And, you know, that was sometimes, I think, a matter of struggle as well. It wasn't just everybody, you know, had one idea and pursued that one idea. I think it was something that evolved. And so, you know, that was the way that I think things matured.
But you were involved in PCA and People's Liberation Music?
Yes, I mean more PCA, a little bit People's Liberation Music,
right.
Particularly when we were on big demonstrations. Emily and I and Georgina used to sing at the truck, Pete sometimes, Cole sometimes, and it was a sort of moving group of people. Sometimes, well, it always felt really great actually, to be singing revolutionary songs and to be sort of there and, you know, hopefully inspiring people, and sometimes quite hair-raising when things got a little rough. And
Nazis have no right to organise! Nazis have no right to organise!
It's hard to not get emotional when you see Cardew right there. So it's like he's gone from being this like hoity-toity experimental composer who's, you know, composing this like experimental music that nobody listens to except for like really rich people, to setting up on the back of a truck, right? And he's driving through Canada and driving through Britain, and they've got the back of a truck. They've got a truck bed there. And he's got a band with an electric guitar and keyboard, and they're driving on the back of a truck, and it says no cruise missiles, Britain out of Northern Ireland, U.S. bases and troops out of Britain. He's taking his music to the streets to build an anti-imperialist movement.
To be singing revolutionary songs and to be sort of there and, you know, hopefully inspiring people, and sometimes quite hair-raising.
I mean, and that's the Progressive Cultural Association, and he's singing their songs in the streets to try and inspire people to be anti-imperialists. That is amazing, right? Amazing.
Things got a little rough. And
Nazis have no right to organise! Nazis have no right to organise! Nazis have no right to organise! Wipe out the Nazi movement! Wipe out the Nazi movement! Wipe out the Nazi
Stand up and sing, for victory will come. The banners of union assemble in the sun, and you'll be content of our song.
What a cultural worker is going to choose, which theme and from where. It is very, very important. For example, to reduce culture merely as an instrument of propaganda, a song or something, it is to vulgarize that culture. PCA and Canadian Culture Workers Committee made some choices. And so it took up various forms and put very different content in them.
When the rhythm and change and the speed of history vie with the events that unfold.
The stage was now set in 1981-82 to produce broad, revolutionary mass culture forms professionally. It is at this precise point that we lost Cornelius Carding.
Yeah, he died very tragically. He was hit by a car, but yeah, that one song that you heard there. So that's a very famous Latin American revolutionary song called El Pueblo Unido Amasa Rabencido, or The People United Will Never Be Defeated. It was actually written by Victor Jara, who was the Chilean revolutionary singer. But Cardu's version of it, he takes this song that's kind of a guitar song by Victor Jara, and he makes it peaceful and glowing with that electric organ, that electric keyboard that Dan is describing. And it's just like his version of El Pueblo Unido is just so peaceful, right? And it's just absolutely, absolutely beautiful. So now I feel like the best thing to do after this, I need to show the video. If you've already seen it, that's fine. You can see it again. Noah, our member, Noah Shank in Boston. He's one of our national leaders of CPI. He's the leader of the East Coast. He's based in the Boston area, but he was just in New York City, and he's going to be in Chicago a lot in the coming months, and he's all around the country. One of our leaders, Noah, made this really awesome video about, kind of getting at what this video was saying about Cardu, about how obsessed he was with his work, right? And how he lived to inspire people with his music, and he took it very, very seriously. And how, look, I am not trying to get you to be normal, right? And if you ever meet a revolutionary organization or a revolutionary person who tells you that they are normal and insists that they're normal, they're not normal, and they're not normal in a very unhealthy way. And I don't want you to be normal. I want you to be extraordinary. And Noah made this beautiful video about that whole question. I will link Noah's channel in the chat. Everyone should subscribe to Noah's channel. This video that Noah made was absolutely brilliant. He was responding to this influencer called Clavicular, and he made this beautiful video about being a revolutionary as the real form of self-help. This is Noah's great video.
If you've spent any time on the Zoomer internet over the past few months, you've probably been unable to avoid Clavicular. The 19-year-old streamer and self-described looks maxer went viral telling his audience that steroids, crystal meth, and extreme self-experimentation will help them ascend, and that it'll improve their looks, their confidence, and their lives. And that's been enough to catapult him across the entire right-wing internet, including what genuinely might be the strangest interview ever aired on the Daily Wire.
Say that she's pretty malformed. Her upper maxilla is extremely recessed, right? She's got the eyes of doom with no infraorbital support.
Most recently, Clavicular, or Clav, as his fans call him, appeared in a live stream alongside a lineup of manosphere-adjacent figures like Nick Fuentes, Sneeko, the Tate brothers, and Myron from the Fresh and Fit podcast. The live stream was bizarre, even by internet standards, with the group piling into a limo and singing along to Kanye's single Heil Hitler while doing Nazi salutes, after which they then proceeded to go clubbing? And as surreal as that moment was, even by internet standards, it exposed something actually important. Because Clavicular isn't just a weird internet character, he's a symptom of a broader problem. His rise reveals the underlying fantasy at the heart of a lot of manosphere, quote, self-improvement content, and how it preys on young, isolated, often neurodivergent men by promising that if they suffer enough, if they optimize enough, if they punish themselves enough, one day they'll finally get to be normal. The fantasy shows up everywhere, from explicitly political gender discourse content to apolitical fitness influencers like Connor Synan or Toji. And there's a reason live streams of some Chad going out to a bar and getting drunk and hitting on women have become so popular. It's like one of the most popular live stream categories. It's because they're selling their audience a fantasy, and it's a harmful one. And I'm not going to lie, I'm exactly the kind of person that this fantasy is meant to appeal to. In fact, I can remember the exact moment I gave up on it. In 2024, I was invited to Sochi, Russia, for the World Youth Festival. In many ways, it was an amazing and transformative experience, incredibly validating in many ways. During the festival, I was able to have a face-to-face with the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, in an exclusive televised Q&A. But one night, there was a lull in activities, and I remember I was walking through the festival grounds as a concert was going on. Some Russian pop stars were on stage, and people were dancing, they were laughing, they were having a great time, and I remember this sadness washed over me. Because in that moment, I realized there was nowhere I could run to. I realized there was nowhere that I could hide from who I was. Even among some of the most high-achieving people, the highest math scores, future politicians, future business leaders from around the world, high-achieving people from Russia, from the developing world, from China, from the BRICS alternative, many of whom had similar politics to me, even among them, I was not normal. Our guide even commented on it to me. I asked her one night, I said, what do you think of Americans? And she said that it felt like many of the people who were there, they just wanted a free trip. It was like a vacation to me. But all I wanted to talk about was geopolitics, obscure political movement. I wanted to talk about BRICS. And later, I told a Russian friend about this experience. And her response was essentially, so what? She said, you're bookish, you're shy, you're a little obsessive, but I like talking to you. And I thought about it, and I realized that she was right. I realized she was right that I'm exceptional. And that the only reason I've been able to do anything that I've done is because I'm different, not in spite of it. And this is the fundamental lie at the heart of individualistic self-help culture online. It's that being normal is the highest virtue that one can have, and it just isn't. Now, that's not to say that self-help in and of itself is wrong, and that self-improvement is also wrong. In fact, self-help as a genre actually has socialistic roots. Samuel Smiles, who coined the term self-help, was a member of the Chartist movement, which was one of the first socialist movements in Britain. What's more, Wallace Wattles, who popularized manifesting with his books The Science of Getting Rich and The Science of Being Great, was a socialist and a follower of Eugene Debs. It wasn't until Rhonda Burns published her book The Secret, which took Wallace Wattles' content and removed all the radical politics from it, that manifesting became cringe. What I'm trying to tell you is not that striving to be a better person is bad, but that the empty pursuit of change or improvement, abstracted from social movements, abstracted from society, will be empty, and that true change comes from joining a movement. A perfect example of positive self-help is the life of Malcolm X. Prior to becoming a member of the Nation of Islam and getting involved, Malcolm was a petty criminal. In his autobiography, he describes pimping women, robbing people, and partying as what made up the whole of his life. And had Detroit Red never joined the Nation of Islam, we never would have heard the name Malcolm X. But by joining a movement, by taking history into his own hands, by learning to work with people, by becoming an organizer, Malcolm became somebody capable of changing the world, because the process of changing history, of getting involved in the struggle, also changes you. It teaches you empathy. It teaches you resilience. It teaches you patience and discipline. It transforms you into a person that is capable of fulfilling the role that history has chosen for you. This transformation is not unique to Malcolm X either. Prior to founding the Black Panther Party for self-defense, Huey Newton was a college dropout who made ends meet by shortchanging people. But because Huey was exceptional, and because he got involved in Students for a Democratic Society, we got maybe the most effective working class movement this country had seen in decades. We got the movement that brought us the free breakfast programs, that brought local community organizations, that empowered the Black community to fight for their rights. And think of what the world would have been robbed of if Huey Newton had decided that his interest in revolutionary politics was too weird and wallowed in his misery on the internet. This is another thing that often gets obscured, but Huey P. Newton was a brilliant organizer, he was a brilliant theoretician, but he was not the most charismatic member of the Black Panther Party. That's just a fact. His public speaking was described as awkward and stilted, sometimes overcomplicated. Many felt that some of his political classes were too dense and insular. Huey P. Newton was not normal. And you need to get it out of your head that the only way that you can amount to anything is by desperately trying to be normal. Because oftentimes, the people who change history are obsessed. And they're able to accomplish what they do because they are obsessed. Another perfect example, Vladimir Lenin. Lenin was not a normal person, nor was he described in personal accounts as a very charming or personable person. People who knew him say that he talked with a lisp. They say that he would get so worked up about party disputes and issues that he would stay up for days on end, ranting about them to nobody. That he would work himself up into so much of a panic that he had to play the piano to calm himself down. Fyodor Ilyich Dan, a Menshevik and one of Lenin's enemies, once attacked him in a pamphlet, saying, "What are you going to do with a guy who talks, writes, thinks, and breathes nothing but revolution 24 hours a day?" And this was a common attack of the Social Democrats on the Bolsheviks. They said that they were weird, that they were cultish, and that they gave the whole of their lives to the struggle. And it had not occurred to them, there was no understanding that the only reason that the Bolsheviks were able to take power, the only reason they were able to change history, to transform Russia from a backwards agrarian society into a superpower was because they were weird. If you really want to live up to what you have to offer humanity, you have to embrace the person that you are, and you should get involved in the struggle. You need to join an organization. Now, joining an organization is not easy. Being part of a movement is not easy. I'm not going to lie to you. It involves a lot of rejection. It involves dealing with and understanding people, and that can be very difficult. And it involves sometimes facing persecution and being resilient to that persecution, withstanding it. But I think about the person that I was before I joined the Center for Political Innovation, and I am so glad that I joined. You know, my favorite American novel is The Grapes of Wrath. And it's my favorite because of how much I relate to the story of Tom Joad and how much he captures what it means to become an activist. I relate to how at the beginning of the story, Tom is selfish, he's mean-spirited, he's short-sighted, impulsive, he's lazy. But by struggling and suffering, by coming to understand the struggle of oppressed people, through getting involved in a movement, he's transformed into a different person. And by the end of the novel, he is somebody who is capable of sacrificing his own freedom to defend a group of striking workers. And after he's made that sacrifices, he realizes he has to run away. And he confronts his mother about why. And the words he says have become a mantra for me. When I've lost or been pushed out of jobs for what I believe. When I've lost partners for what I believe. When life feels hopeless and I start to wonder if my commitment was worth it, I recite these words to myself. He says, "Maybe a fella ain't got a soul of his own, only a little part of a big soul. And then it won't matter. I'll be all around in the dark. Wherever there's a cop beating up a guy, I'll be there. Wherever there's a fight so hungry people can eat, I'll be there. I'll be there in the way that guys yell when they're angry, or kids laugh when they're hungry and they know supper's ready. When the people are living in the houses they've built, and eating the food that they've grown, I'll be there too. That is what self-improvement means to me. That is what being an activist means to me. And if you are interested in anti-imperialist politics, if you want to take up history's challenge, I invite you to join my organization. It's called the Center for Political Innovation, and there will be a link in the description. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Noah absolutely nailed it. That was absolutely tremendous. And that's what people need to hear. It may not be the most popular message, but it's what people need to hear. The only way we're going to get out of these ugly wars and the impoverishment of our country, we have to build a movement. We have to build a movement. And we're doing it. We're actually building the movement. You know, you look at those videos of Cardew out in the streets of Canada, you know, with his band. We're not musical in particular, though I think we ought to have more music. I'm all for music. You know, we always have music at our events, but, you know, I mean, we're out there spreading the message and building an actual movement, right? And, you know, we're not just complaining on the internet and feeling hopeless. If you want to feel hope and not hopeless, you got to build a movement. You've got to build a movement. So, yeah, I'm going to put on a song from North Korea performed by an electrical orchestra. You know, this is North Korea's performance of Socialism is Good, the Chinese communist song, Socialism is Good. And it's done with that electrical orchestra and that kind of optimistic tone. Then after that, yeah, I think I'm going to read another chapter from the Trotsky book, and then I'll answer questions and we'll be done. But anyhow, here's Socialism is Good, performed by the North Korean Electronic Orchestra. All right. Now, before I start reading the chapter, I'm going to read a chapter from my Trotsky book, Trotsky and the Neocons. And then from there, I'll start answering questions. I want to remind you, the best way to send a question is with a Buy Me a Coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com/Caleb Bompin and send your question. Somebody already did it, and they were anonymous, and that's fine. You can be anonymous with your questions, right? It says someone bought a coffee. They sent me a good question. Well, I need someone else to follow up on that and ask me more questions because it's your questions that make the second half of the show what it is. So send any questions you've got for the second half of the program. We will. You can also do Rumble rants on the Rumble, and you can also buy me a coffee, or you can cash at me at Caleb Bompin 22. Best way to do it is buy me a coffee. But anyway. So, yeah, send questions for the second half of the show. But now we're going to read chapter 2 of my book, Trotsky and the Neoconservatives. So we're going to continue. Trotsky and the Neoconservatives. This is chapter 2, the 1939 split in the Fourth International. The United States wing of Trotskyism in 1939, the Socialist Workers' Party, was the largest Trotsky-aligned group in the world. This, on the surface, seems a bit odd. Communism and socialism have always been much less popular in the United States than in other Western countries, something that Frederick Engels commented on in an essay during Marx's lifetime and consistently is acknowledged by political scientists as a constant reality, continuing up through the Cold War even to today. Why was the largest outpost of Trotsky's Fourth International in America, of all places? Regardless, the U.S. Socialist Workers' Party was really two parties in one when it was founded, with the Fourth Internationalists leaving the Socialist Party to establish their own organization in 1939. The party had two headquarters, two organizational methods and styles, and two worldviews. The main base of support for American Trotskyism was among labor activists in the Midwest. Farrell Dobbs, Bill Brown, and James Cannon had led the 1934 Teamsters strike under the slogan, "Make Minneapolis a Union Town." The strike committee had effectively seized the city with the no scab trucks, with the rule no scab trucks and pickets smashing windshields with baseball bats to enforce it. The Teamsters had brought in a layer of Trotskyites as organizers and waged the siege of the Midwest, unionizing truck drivers and factory workers in Nebraska, Iowa, and Wisconsin. The Teamster bosses hated Roosevelt and the Democratic Party, their rivals in the struggle to get dues-paying members and close shop contracts. The Trotskyites had the same enemy, the Communist Party, which was following Moscow's Popular Front line, supporting Roosevelt and the Democrats in the anti-fascist front. However, in addition to the labor activist base in the Midwest, the Trotskyites had a large number of members in New York City. James Cannon explains in his History of American Trotskyism how this came about due to frustrating circumstances that set the stage for the 1939 split. By the time the Second World War broke out, the Communist Party controlled two major city council seats in Harlem, with Benjamin Davis and Peter Cacchione elected as card-carrying Communist Party members. Vito Marcantonio, a close ally of the Communist Party and member of its fraternal organization, the International Workers' Order, was elected to the House of Representatives. The Communist Party owned a large building near Union Square, and Communist Party boss Earl Browder was a kingmaker inside the New York Democratic Party machine. Browder was frequently called to Washington to meet with the Roosevelt administration, and during the Second World War, he met with the State Department to consult on war mobilization efforts. With Soviet-aligned communism being a New York City institution, it created many discontents. Many people joined the Communist Party and got burned. This was especially true as the Popular Front policies did not match the revolutionary reputation of communism. Communism was supposed to be a revolutionary ideology, inspiring workers to overthrow the bosses. But during the Popular Front years, it meant a kind of pro-Soviet, anti-racist, anti-fascism wrapped in the American flag, with talk of eventually establishing a centrally planned economy. Many disappointed people who felt the Communist Party was not radical enough or had simply had their feathers ruffled on an organizational level joined the Trotskyites. Cannon reflected in his History of American Trotskyism, quote, "Every new movement attracts certain elements, which might properly be called the lunatic fringe. Freaks looking for the most extreme expression of radicalism, misfits, windbags, and chronic oppositionists who have been thrown out of half a dozen organizations. Such people began to come to us in our isolation shouting, 'Hello, comrades.' I was always against admitting such people, but the tide was too strong. I waged a bitter fight in the New York branch of the Communist League against admitting a man solely because of his appearance and dress. Many people came to us who had revolted against the Communist Party, not for its bad sides, but for its good sides. That is, the discipline of the party, the subordination of the individual to the decisions of the party in the current work. A lot of dilettantish, petty bourgeois-minded people who had either left the CP or been expelled from it, wanted, or rather thought they wanted, to become Trotskyists. Some of them joined the New York branch and brought with them that same prejudice against discipline in our organization. Many of the newcomers made a fetish for democracy. They were repelled so much by the bureaucratism of the Communist Party that they desired an organization without any authority or discipline or centralization, whatever. But beyond just the problem of attracting primarily the Communist Party's misfits and rejects, the Trotskyites had another organizational issue in New York City. They increasingly became a home for intellectuals and writers who were attracted to the revolutionary politics, but did not want to be identified with the Soviet Union's problematic reputation. As Cannon explained, quote, Trotskyism became more popular in petty bourgeois, intellectual, and half-intellectual circles. For a time, it became the fashion. Party membership conferred a certain distinction and imposed no serious hardships. Internal democracy was exaggerated to the point of looseness. Centralism and discipline existed only in the program and not in the practice. The party in New York was more like a sophisticated discussion club than a combat party of the proletariat. Alan M. Wald explained in his book, The New York Intellectuals, Trotskyism made it possible for these rebellious intellectuals to declare on the side of revolution and yet denounce Stalin from the left as an arch betrayer of Lenin's heritage. Harry Ring, a leader of the Socialist Workers' Party based in Newark, New Jersey, in the late 1930s, described the atmosphere where the New York City branch of the party was consumed by, quote, young intellectuals. He explained, you had a particular moment within the youth movement, that is to say, the fallacious notion that what was decisive was not the party, but the youth organization, and that the youth was the vanguard, and the party was a bunch of old fuddy-duddies. They pay the rent, but the youth movement, that's the real revolutionary movement. There was no future for young intellectuals in the bourgeois world. There were no careers open to them. Many of them, including some brilliant intellectuals, turned briefly to the revolutionary movement. But then, as soon as things got better, when the war and prosperity came in and the jobs started opening up and things weren't tough for the intellectuals, we began to see this very rapid exodus from our movement. Irving Kristol reflected on his memories of being a Trotskyist at City College during the late 1930s in a piece for the New York Times. He explained the atmosphere. The only alcoves that mattered to me were number 1 and number 2, the alcoves of the anti-Stalinist left and the pro-Stalinist left, respectively. It was between these two alcoves that the War of the Worlds was fought over the faceless bodies of the mass of students, whom we tried desperately to manipulate into the right position, but about whom, to tell you the truth, we knew little and cared less. Most of the students from Jewish, working class, or lower middle class backgrounds with a socialist tint were spontaneously sympathetic to the New Deal and FDR. The really left-wing groups, though, larger than elsewhere, were a distinct minority. Alcove number 2, by far the most populous of the political alcoves, could rarely mobilize more than 400 or 500 out of the total enrollment of 20,000, perhaps, students for a protest or an action. We in alcove number 1 numbered about 30 regulars, and we were lucky to get an attendance of 50 to 100 at one of ours. But then, as now, student government and student politics were a minority affair, and what the passive majority thought didn't really matter. What happened on campus was determined by them, the denizens of alcove number 2, or us. In truth, very little did happen. But at the time, what did seem terribly important. During the first 3 years, they controlled the college newspaper. In my last year, we got control. It was a glorious victory. And I do think we went on to publish a slightly less mendacious newspaper, but I haven't even a vague remembrance of what we wrote. I shall not say much about alcove number 2, the home of the pro-Stalinist left. But Lord, how dreary a bunch they seemed to be. I thought then, with sectarian snobbery that comes so easily to young radicals, that they didn't and never would amount to much. One is now a scientist at a major university. The other was Julius Rosenberg. I do believe their dreariness was a fact, and that their dreariness in turn had something to do with the political outlook they took it upon themselves to espouse. These were young college students who, out of sympathy with communism as officially established in the Soviet Union, had to publicly justify the Moscow trials and the bloody purge of the old Bolsheviks, had to publicly accept the self-glorification of Stalin as the exemplar of communist virtue. Though I had no trouble understanding how a young man at the time could have joined the Young Communist League or one of its fronts, I did find it hard to imagine how he stayed there. Not everyone did stay, of course. Many of the members of Alcove Number 1 had their first political experience with a Stalinist group and had left in disillusionment. Ring described his experience in the New York Youth Organization in these years. Quote, another young intellectual who was considered very promising, he was only 17 or 18 at the time, was Irving Howe, now a right-wing social democrat. He was not much more appealing then. I remember I was in Newark, going to New York, going to the big city to attend the youth meeting in New York, and they were having an educational discussion led by Irving Howe and a big debate on the problem of political morality, Bolshevik morality. The question was posed by Irving Howe. Suppose you knew that one of our opponents in the party had committed a class crime like crossing a picket line or something, but you were the only witness and it was your word against his and you couldn't really prove that he did it. Would you have the right to tell the party that he did it? There's a big labor struggle, a big radical struggle going on, but this was the question they were debating in New York. Well, I got back on the tubes to Newark and I didn't go in much anymore. Ring explained that the youth organization aligned itself with a layer of writers, literary figures, intellectual figures, academic figures. Trotskyism was, so to speak, fashionable among the intellectuals in the late 1930s. The principal focal point of these circles was the magazine Partisan Review, which was then a very serious literary and political publication. Such people as Edmund Wilson, Mary McCarthy, Philip Rov. Their association was more so with Trotsky than with Trotskyist ideas. Partisan Review was a magazine that had been created by writers and intellectuals associated with the Communist Party in 1934. Then in 1937, it was relaunched. After 2 years, it ceased publication. Then in 1937, it was relaunched as an anti-Stalinist publication when its owners, Philip Rov and William Phillips, rebooted it and turning against the Soviet Union and its foreign policy. The 1937 relaunch brought onto the editorial board a slew of Ivy League academics, such as Dwight MacDonald, Sidney Hook, and Frederick Dupee, who agreed with its anti-Stalinist position. Among them was James Burnham, the chair of the philosophy department at New York University. Alan M. Wald echoes Ring's recollections about the New York City Trotskyist movement, which had been the subject of much academic analysis, especially in its later trajectory and incarnations. Since the 1960s, there has been a steady stream, now swelling to a torrent of books and articles about this group. Sometimes the New York intellectuals are called the New York family. In popular usage, the term refers to a loose circle of intellectuals whose preeminent forums have been Partisan Review, Commentary, and Dissent. Contributors to these journals, who were old enough to be politically active in the 1930s, tended to become, like Sidney Hook, not only anti-Stalinists, but also revolutionary Marxists of one persuasion or other. The young paper box union lawyer Sam Ballin, eventually to be known as Sam Marcy, leader of the Workers' World Party in the post-war years, found the atmosphere in New York City Trotskyism to be completely nauseating during the late 1930s. As a Ukrainian-born activist who focused on labor organizing, he was completely isolated within the Socialist Workers' Party. He eventually recruited labor activist Dorothy Ballin and Shakespearean actor Vincent Copeland to move to Buffalo, New York, and build their own wing of the Trotskyist movement among steelworkers. The clash between the Socialist Workers' Party's labor-oriented wing and these literary and academic Manhattan circles came in the fall of 1939 when the Soviet Union signed a non-aggression pact with Nazi Germany. Roosevelt, U.S. media had been somewhat sympathetic to the Soviet Union as an ally against Hitler. Roosevelt had been supported by the U.S. Communist Party. But the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact changed everything. Communists were declared to be hypocrites and insincere in their anti-fascism. Time magazine began calling the Communist Party the Commune Nazis. Though Trotsky criticized the way the Soviet Union and its allies explained the policy, he maintained the USSR had the right to make this alliance, and he said he would have called for it sooner. However, the New York intellectuals disagreed. After the 1939 pact, the Socialist Workers' Party opposition, based almost entirely in New York City, announced opposition on the Russian question. As far as they were concerned, the USSR was no longer a workers' state. Some of them said it was state capitalism, with the party bosses as the new capitalist class. Max Shachtman and James Burnham said it was bureaucratic collectivism, a new economic system of which Nazi Germany was also an example, neither capitalist nor socialist, but ruled by technicians and corporate planners coordinating with the government. The group insisted that the Trotskyist movement completely denounced the Soviet Union, and they also decried an authoritarian culture within the organization. Among the Shachtman-led opposition, there were a few who considered the USSR to still be a degenerated workers' state, but opposed the regime of the party, which they described as authoritarian and stifling of open discussion. James Cannon's book, The Struggle for a Proletarian Party, gives his overall analysis and recollection of the 1939 conflict. He reflected on how closely the feelings of the New York intellectuals were tied in with the overall tone of the U.S. government and establishment. They could stomach the Moscow trials, but not the prospect of coming into collision with the democratic government of U.S. imperialism. After the Soviet invasion of Poland and then of Finland, the fight of the fellow travelers became a rout. This wild migration attracted wide attention and comment. We ourselves contributed our observations and witticisms on this ludicrous spectacle. Up to now, however, we had remained silent on an analogous phenomenon in our own periphery. The flight of the more sophisticated but hardly more courageous intellectual fellow travelers of American Trotskyism had been scarcely less precipitate and catastrophic. With the approach of the war, Trotskyism as a doctrine and a movement came to lose its credibility. Many of the intellectuals, sniffing danger, arranged a somewhat hasty and undignified departure. In truth, there is not much left of that considerable army of drawing room heroes who used to admire Trotsky's literary style and confound the less intelligent periphery of Stalinism with nuggets of wisdom mined from Trotsky's writings. The collapse of the Trotskyist cultural front was taken by some, especially the ex-fronters themselves, to signify a collapse of our movement. The journals of the class enemy to which they promptly attached themselves, some of them, had already worked up the courage to write about Trotskyism as an outmoded sectarian tendency. However, it is they who are outmoded, not the movement of the proletarian vanguard Trotskyism. The petty bourgeois intellectuals are introspective by nature. They mistake their own emotions, their uncertainties, their fears, and their own egotistic concerns about their personal fate for the sentiments and movements of the great masses. They measure the world's agony by their own inconsequential aches and pains. And so far as party membership consists in part of petty bourgeois elements completely disconnected from the proletarian class struggle, the crisis which overtook the periphery of our movement is transferred, or rather extended, into the party. The intellectuals simply couldn't stomach adopting international positions that put them at odds with the U.S. government, and that placed them in a position of having to defend a workers' state, even while denouncing its leaders. As Cannon explained, the driving impulses behind the opposition as a whole are petty bourgeois nervousness at the prospect of impending struggle, difficulties, and sacrifices, and the unconscious desire to avoid them at all costs. For some, no doubt, the frenzied struggle against our program and our tradition is simply a device to mask a capitulatory desertion of the revolutionary movement and a cloud of dust and controversy. The issue was about much more than the Russian question, which the New York intellectuals did not fully agree on. The real point of disagreement was about the relationship of individuals to a political organization. The Russian question just presented an opportunity for the two groups to directly clash. As Cannon pointed out, their inability to give a common answer to the character of the Soviet Stalin regime did not prevent them from forming a common faction in their fight against the, quote, regime in the party. In their eyes, all questions are subordinate to this. Cannon explained that the fight against the regime of the Trotskyist movement was rooted in personalities and a mindset that had developed among the New York branch. Quote, for the proletarian revolutionist, the party is the concentrated expression of his life and purpose. He is bound to it for his life and death. He preaches and practices party patriotism because he knows that his socialist ideal cannot be realized without the party. In his eyes, the crime of crimes is disloyalty or irresponsibility toward the party. The proletarian revolutionist is proud of his party. He defends it before the world on all occasions. The proletarian revolutionist is a disciplined man, since the party cannot exist as a combat organization without discipline. When he finds himself in the minority, he loyally submits to the decision of the party and carries out the decisions while he awaits new events to verify the disputes or new opportunities to discuss them again. The moment his toes are stepped on or he is rebuffed, he forgets all about the interests of the movement and remembers only that his feelings have been hurt. The revolution may be important, but wounded vanity of a petty bourgeois intellectual is more important. He is all for discipline when he is laying down the law to others, but as soon as he finds himself in a minority, he begins to deliver ultimatums and threats to the party majority. As Cannon explained, a culture of individualism, gossip, and lack of party patriotism had long existed within the Trotskyist movement. Almost since the beginning of the Trotskyist movement in this country, more than 11 years ago, its normal development and functioning has been impeded by an internal disease which poisoned the bloodstream of the party organism. The name of this disease is Abernism. The characteristics of Abernism, as they have been consistently and uninterruptedly manifested for 10 years, are clique politics, ceaseless dissemination of gossip and complaints about the party regime, subordination of principled questions to organizational and personal considerations, unprincipled combinationism in every faction fight, and ideological treachery. We are living in serious times. We stand on the eve of grave events and great tests for our movement. People who can be disoriented and swept off their feet by rumors and gossip and unsupported accusations will not be very reliable soldiers in the hard coming days. The petty bourgeoisie, after all, do everything on a small scale. The gossip and slander campaign of our opposition is not a drop in the bucket compared to the torrents of lies, misinformation, and slander that will be poured over the heads of revolutionary fighters in the coming days, the war crisis, through the mighty propaganda mediums of our enemies. And it is to be expected that for long periods of time, we will be gagged and bound hand and foot and have no means of communication with each other. Only those who have thought out their principles and know how to hold them firmly will be able to sustain themselves in such times. It is not difficult to foresee that those who succumbed already at the feeble anticipation of this campaign inside our own party can be engulfed by the first wave of the real campaign. Such comrades need not simply a reassurance about this or that fairy tale. They need a re-education in the principles and methods of Marxist politics. Only then will it be possible to rely on them for future battles. The Workers' Party held its founding meeting in 1940, after there had been a large number of expulsions from the Socialist Workers' Party. The New York intellectuals invited people to the founding event of their movement, accusing the Trotskyist movement of practicing cult of the leader. Cannon quotes them advertising themselves, saying at their organization's meeting, "There you will find an organization that works out its own policies, independent and democratically, to meet the needs and interests of the workers, not to follow a party line laid down by a leader in Moscow or in Mexico City." You see, unlike Cannon, the New York intellectuals thought for themselves. They did not obey Stalin or Trotsky. They were an organization that works out its own policies, and it was freedom and independence that enabled them to echo mainstream media and the US government's sudden abhorrence for the Soviet Union. Such cowardice, dressed up as nonconformity, echoes louder in our times than ever and has always become characteristic of liberal intellectuals. The three leaders of the opposition, Max Shachtman, James Burnham, and Martin Aburn, were set to lead the new organization that embraced the notion of being a third camp Trotskyist. Trotsky mocked the notion of the third camp, responding to the publication New International that had been seized by the Shachtmanites. Quote, "The very first programmatic articles in the Purloined Organ already reveal the completely light-mindedness and hollowness of this new anti-Marxist grouping, which now appears under the label Third Camp. What is this animal? There is the camp of capitalism and the camp of the proletariat. But is there perhaps a third camp, a petty bourgeois sanctuary? In the nature of things, it is nothing else. But as always, the petty bourgeois camouflages his camp with the paper flowers of rhetoric. Let us lend our ears. Here is one camp, France and England. There's another camp, Hitler and Stalin, and a third camp, Burnham and Shachtman. The Fourth International turns out for them to be in Hitler's camp. Stalin made this discovery long ago. And so, a new great slogan, muddlers and pacifists of the world, all ye suffering from the pinpricks of fate, rally to the third camp. But the whole trouble is that two warring camps do not at all exhaust the bourgeois world. What about all the neutral and semi-neutral countries? What about the United States? Should Italy and Japan be assigned? The Scandinavian countries, India and China? We have in mind not the revolutionary Indian or Chinese workers, but rather India and China as oppressed countries. The schoolboy schemata of the three camps leaves out a trifling detail: the colonial world, the greater portion of mankind. James Burnham might be rightly called the first neoconservative. He was far ahead of many of his comrades in 1939 who eventually followed a similar trajectory. Wald's history explains. At the end of the faction fight in 1940, he attended the meeting that launched the new Workers' Party and then dropped a letter off with the secretary of the Workers' Party headquarters to resign from the party. In the letter, he stated he really had not been a Marxist for some time, and he had no confidence in the organization that he had just founded. James Burnham published his widely reviewed and circulated book, The Managerial Revolution, the following year, in which he laid out his thesis of a new class of managers, neither capitalists nor workers, who now ruled. When the Second World War broke out, Burnham signed up for the Office of Strategic Service and became an intelligence operative. After the war, the Office of Strategic Services became the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. A conspiratorial mind might wonder if Burnham had been a plant the entire time, as his career as a revolutionary Trotskyist was very short, and his denunciation of Marxism and enlistment in the intelligence services came very quickly. But the Communist Party functioning as essentially an ally of the Roosevelt administration, representing the Soviet Union, and Trotskyism acting as a wing of Marxism that nudged the influence of the Axis powers in the labor movement, there's no doubt that the U.S. government apparatus, as well as other intelligence services, had their fingers in Trotskyist groups. Whether Burnham, the well-respected college professor who became a Trotskyist, played a role in a dramatic split between Trotsky's followers in New York City and then became a professional spook was ever sincere is a fair question to ask. Partisan Review continued to run Burnham's articles, which became more and more anti-communist, especially in the post-war years as McCarthyism set in. Burnham eventually became the editor of William F. Buckley's National Review and an influential figure in American conservatism. Most of Burnham's colleagues took much longer to politically evolve, though Harry Ring pointed out that many of the young Shachtmanites simply left politics after the war and post-war expansion. Ring reminisced about the Newark wing of Trotskyism, whole group of really talented young intellectuals. I don't think they had been in the movement more than 6 or 8 months when the Shachtman opposition developed, and then went right with Shachtman. They went out with Shachtman, and they went through the Shachtman movement like a dose of salt. And within 2 years, They had been done with the whole business. The Workers' Party continued with Max Shachtman and Martin Aburn in command, with a whole slew of intellectual talent lined up behind them, including Albert Gleutzer, Hal Draper, Irving Howe, and Stan Ware. And that's the end of chapter 2. The next chapter is Max Shachtman meets the CIA. This is my book, Trotsky and the Neoconservatives, the whole story. All right, everybody. Glad that you're here with us tonight. Glad that you're here. And yeah, we're just doing the same thing we always do, on telling our story and streaming. And, you know, yeah, so why don't we do the roll call? I'll call you all out as I see you, names and locations, and then I'll answer any questions. If you've got a question that you would like me to answer in the second half of the show, all you need to do is send me, buy me a coffee. That'd be the best way to do it. You can also do a Rumble rant. If you're on the Rumble, you can also do a Cash App me, Caleb Maupin 22. The best way to do it is buy me a coffee. All right, names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Ryan in Kansas City. So good to see you, Ryan. Good to see you. Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Who is with us? Names and locations. Anybody? I don't know why the chat is being so slow tonight. Ryan and Master Jack in South Africa. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Samuel, way out east. Good to see you, Samuel. Good to see you. Names and locations. Irene in New York City is still in New York City. Well, good to see you, Irene. It's really good to have you here, as always. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Names and locations. Yeah, the chat is kind of slow tonight. Hey, you know, I just keep going. You know, this isn't a contest to see who gets the most likes and shares. And, you know, some nights we're hopping. Saturday nights tend to be a big night on this channel. But, I just keep doing this, right? I'm building an organization, and, there's people in our community that are very dedicated. And that's what this video of CPI, I mean, that's what this video is all about, right? This is our group. That's us. Yep. Center for Political Innovation. And we do great stuff. And we do have one question that has come in, via Buy Me a Coffee. And I will answer it. But yeah, any more questions would be great. So the question that came in was, Project for a New American Century. Interesting that the document was focused on Iraq, Iran, and Syria. I guess China would be seen as a rival in the 21st century, or rising economies like India or Brazil. Why does the Middle East seem so significant in the early 21st century foreign policy? Seems like Iran's been on the naughty list for a while. Iraq seems like they fixated on making an example of Iraq, making sure Iraq would get it. All right. Well, there's a couple factors there. First thing is that Russia really didn't restore its economy. Russia had not gotten over the fall of the Soviet Union until like 2004, 2005, right? Russia really did solidify things. But in the 90s, when the Project for a New American Century was published, they were still pretty weak. And China at that point was not viewed as a rival as much. We didn't start hearing about China being a rival of the United States around the world. We didn't start hearing that way until like the Beijing Olympics, right? The Beijing Olympics, we started hearing stuff, but you know, I mean, there was still a belief that China was violating human rights, that China was, you know, a dictatorship or something, but there wasn't the hatred for China back then that there is now. I mean, it was occasionally, you did hear it. There was an episode of the Christian television show Touched by an Angel that was really anti-Chinese government, and there was the Free Tibet people, and you'd hear stuff. There would be anti-China stuff you'd hear, but it wasn't the same, right? And it was kind of like, well, China is now doing business with America, and they're becoming more capitalist, and eventually China is going to adopt the Western system. And and like, it was weird because we all knew that China was still run by a communist party, but it was just like, oh, but it's not, because people make a lot of money. It was very odd. It was just, we just kind of ignored that. And but the whole time China was growing, right? It's kind of a slow and steady wins the race kind of thing, right? China was, they just kept, as they were getting foreign investment, they kept building themselves up. And now we look at what China is now and the amount of expansion that China has really, really experienced. And, I mean, in a way, in the 90s, that was kind of discounted. And it was just kind of, they assumed that China would eventually just become a Western country. And that was not the case. India also experienced a lot of neoliberalism in the 90s, and was not viewed as a rival. And that Israel was hated by, and still is, I mean, even more so now, but I mean, has always been, hated by the Muslim world, the Palestinians, and the way that they treated the Palestinians. So there's that. There's also that the fight of the Palestinians, the Intifada and all of that, was an anti-imperialist struggle. And Iraq and Iran to some degree. Iran, not as much back then. Iran, I mean, is an anti-imperialist government. In the 90s, though, Iran very much pivoted in a reformist direction. But Iraq, especially in the 90s, but Iran too, were viewed as funders and allies of the Palestinian resistance. And that, I think, is the reason, right? China and Russia were not at that point, rejuvenated. We're not seen as geopolitical rivals, but the kind of the hot spot of anti-imperialist struggle was in the Middle East, and Iran and Iraq were viewed as sponsors, and Libya too. Libya was on that list, the Project for a New American Century list. They were viewed as sponsors of the Palestinian resistance, and I think that's why the Project for a New American Century did that, right? And it's it's Bill Kristol, it's a whole bunch of people. It's this think tank that came together with. They laid out a strategy for the United States that involved regime change wars, and people look at it. It's a lot of 9/11 truth material looks at it and says it's kind of eerie that it contained, that it said in order to carry out the regime change wars the USA would want, there would need to be some kind of Pearl Harbor-like event. And so people read that as like they were saying you needed another 9/11, and it basically called for the United States to engage in regime change wars in the Middle East. That is absolutely true. The Project for a New American Century. And it's a neocon document, and it's the people who, come up, the people in chapter 3 of this book, the Shachtmanites who went into the CIA and became conservatives in the 70s. They put together this document, the Project for a New American Century, and that's neoconservatism. But what do neocons actually believe? They believe in philosophical irrationalism, right? They believe that there is no truth. They believe human beings are a cancer on the planet. They believe in pessimism and deconstruction. And it's very similar, right? There's postmodernism in art. There's postmodernism in philosophy, and there's abstraction in art, and there's atonal music, and it's like pessimism is what they're about, and the belief that human beings are the threat. And Irving Kristol is the big neocon who was a Trotskyist, but there's another neocon, big influence, Leo Strauss. And Leo Strauss, his worldview was basically that all the great philosophers of history have had to write in code, because if the people learned what Plato and Aristotle and all them really thought, they would persecute them. and that basically the great intellectuals, the philosopher kings in the Platonic sense, are persecuted. They're persecuted by the people, and that what makes the West good is the West holds back the vulgar masses from persecuting the great intellectuals. That's philosophical irrationalism, and that is what is believed by the neocons. That's their worldview. And that they view the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany as examples of excessive democracy. They view them as that's what happens when people are mobilized and mass movements are formed and people get involved in politics. It's kind of the opposite of how we generally think of it. We're generally taught that Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union were dictatorships. But the neocons and Leo Strauss, they view them as democratic in the sense that they view them as like mob rule, as like when the vulgar mob of people get active and they start persecuting the elite, right? And it goes back to the whole debate about the republic versus democracy. In ancient Greek society, a republic was considered a responsible elected government, whereas democracy was considered to be vulgar mob rule. And they view totalitarianism as democracy. And they view, the horrors of fascism and what they didn't like about the Soviet Union, or what they accused the Soviet Union of as being the result of evil within ordinary people. And it's their belief that ordinary people need to be controlled to prevent that kind of evil. That's what they believe, right? That is their belief. And that's the neocon belief, is that it is the duty of the West to fight totalitarianism, and that totalitarianism is naturally human, and it is just what human beings do, etc. That is what the neocons believe, and it's particularly scary. And they have an elitism and the noble lie, the idea that it's okay to lie to the masses of people because they don't really understand politics. Politics is too complicated for them to understand. Trump was surrounded by neocons, and he lied, and he campaigned on a platform of war, and they were planning this. The Democrats killed Socrates. There you go. Well, Socrates was accused of corrupting the youth of Athens. And I guess in some of his lectures, he created sympathy for a country that they had been at war with. And what's interesting though is that Socrates did get a very big boost from the temple at Delphi. And I've done streams about that whole thing on ancient history. It's all very, very complicated. One section of the establishment really was promoting Socrates, but then they turned against him, right? And he was forced to drink hemlock, right? For corrupting the youth of Athens, for his teaching. And his dialogue that he gave while dying, the Phaedo dialogue, is really beautiful. If you ever get a chance to read the Phaedo account of the death of Socrates, it is a really beautiful and powerful dialogue where he talks about the separation of the soul from the body. He talks about how when he found out he was going to be executed, he kept having a dream, and the dream would say to him, go forth and make music. And how to be a philosopher is to be independent of your body and to let your soul and your intellect dominate, and to not be nailed down by your bodily desires. And it's really powerful stuff. You read the Phaedo, it's some really powerful material. But anyhow, if anyone else wants to ask a question, you can send a buy me a coffee. I am going to put on one last bit of music, and if anyone has any last questions, I will answer them. If not, we'll call it a night. Not every stream we do has to be long. I get on here some nights. We're just doing the best that we can, and we're doing great. Our organization is doing great. And if I stream tomorrow night, it'll probably be later. It'll be like 10:30 because we have our weekly membership check-in, and we're getting ready for mobilizations, and we got to stop this war against Iran. So, all right. So while I'm waiting, if anyone has any last questions, final call, this is the chance to send any questions. I'm going to put on some music. I'm going to go to my songs folder that I've got. Look at that. And I'm going to go to my songs folder. I guess I will put on what will I put on? I will put on King Harvest, which is a song that's about the Communist Party's efforts to organize sharecroppers in the 1930s. It's by the band, and it's about a Southern farmer who is organized into the Tenant Farmers Union of the Trade Union Unity League. And it's, it's called King Harvest. So while King Harvest, this cover of King Harvest is playing, please send me your questions.
Corn in the fields, I listen to the rice when the wind blows across the water. King Harvest has surely come. I work for the union, 'cause she's so good to me, and I'm bound to come out on top. That's where she said I should be. I will hear every word the boss may say, for he's the one who hands me down my pay. Looks like this time I'm gonna get to stay. I'm a union man now all the way. Smell of the leaves from the magnolia trees in the meadow. King Harvest is surely come. A dry summer and then come fall, which I depend on most of all. Hey Rainmaker, can you hear the call? Please let these crops grow tall. Long enough I've been up on Skid Row, and it's plain to see I've nothing to show. I'm glad to pay those union dues. Just don't judge me by my shoes. Scarecrow and a yellow moon, and pretty soon a carnival on the edge of town. King Harvest is surely come. Last year this time it wasn't no joke. My whole barn went up in smoke, and our horse Jethro, he went mad, and I can't ever remember things being that bad. And then here come a man with the paper and pen, telling us our hard times are about to end. And then if they don't give us what we like, he said, man, that's when you gotta go on strike. Corn in the fields, I listen to the rice when the wind blows across the water. King Harvest is surely come.
Yeah, I mean, I see the news about Tehran facing bombardment. I've spent some time in Tehran before, and that's heartbreaking news. And look, this is a nightmare situation we're in right now, and I hope this war ends, and I hope that, I mean, I don't know. This is not what anyone who voted for Trump voted for. And it's not what the people who don't like Trump voted for. And I mean, this is, it's heartbreaking. And, I don't know, in the past, when bad things like this have happened, I have lashed out at the anti-war movement because they have disappointed me so much, and I've seen the failure of their strategies and stuff. But you know, I'm kind of over that. I really am, because I mean, I don't know. I've made my point. They've heard me. They don't care, you know. And I mean, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, you know, on some level, they know what I'm saying. I don't have to tell it to them. You know, and on some level, they can't do what I think they should be doing, you know, or they would probably be doing it. I mean, and it's not, it's, you know, it's a mess. I mean, at the end of the day, all we can do is build our own organization. That's all we can do. We can build CPI. You know, I look at the anti-war movement, but you know, hey, look at Dan, look at the LA group. They went and they were able to intervene, and they, you know, were able to get through on a major channel, and that was good. That was very, very effective. You know, so there you go. And, you know, I don't know. We do have another question that has come in. Swine Class said, I've heard reports about Mujtaba Khamenei is in a coma and that he hasn't been seen since his election, and they pledged allegiance to a cardboard cutout. Okay. The fact that he hasn't been seen since his election, that I know. The other things that you're saying, I have not heard, and that sounds like disinformation, right? How close is Uncle Sam to connecting with, you know, what you said about him not being seen, I think that makes sense, because, you know, Trump has already basically said he wants to off him. He's not accepting him, right? So it makes sense he wouldn't be seen. But as far as them pledging allegiance to a cardboard cutout, as far as him being in a coma, that I haven't heard, right? That I think sounds, you know, that sounds like a bit of a stretch. So you know, and again, I feel like, you know, they could have elected anybody. Would they elect a guy in a coma? You know, wouldn't that, if it then came out that he was in a coma, wouldn't that look really bad for Iran? I don't think that's necessarily what's going on. But I mean, we don't know. He will come out, but right now, I mean, you know, right now the USA is on a killing spree and the country is in the middle of a war. So, you know, probably not good for him to just reveal where he is. But there you go. I don't know. I mean, I who knows, but I really would have a hard time thinking that they would then elect a guy in a coma. You know, I have a hard time with that one. But who knows? We're in a rough situation. It is a really, really rough situation. And you know, the second part of the question, how close is Uncle Sam to connecting with a Dulcie? I don't accept that about Dulcie, and I've talked about that on these streams also. Dulcie is in a situation where she's got an indictment. They're threatening to kidnap her also, and she's cooperating to some degree, but her government is still intact. But I don't accept the narrative that she's a traitor. I don't accept that. I think that it was pretty clear that, you know, that Maduro was kidnapped, and there was a battle that happened, and Maduro was kidnapped, and, you know, Venezuela has a gun to its head and is not able to do what it would like to do and is under duress, basically. But in order to prevent a civil war and hold the country together, they're cooperating with the USA to some degree. But I don't accept. I mean, the economy is not being dismantled. You know, and the USA is basically lifting some sanctions and forcing them not to send oil to Cuba. And it's a bad situation, but I just don't buy you know, and again, if Dulce Rodriguez is indeed dismantling socialism in Venezuela, we'll know, right? It'll be very clear at some point. Right now, that is not clear. What I see is Dulce Rodriguez in a very tough situation. You know, she's talked about how the CIA murdered her father. You know, and she's talked about how, you know, and it's like, I see disinformation, for example, right? You know, she thanked Trump for tweeting out something positive about her meeting with Steve Witkoff, Trump's negotiator, right? I saw it all over Twitter, bots saying she thanked Trump for kidnapping Maduro. She did not do that. She thanked him for tweeting out a picture of, and they really, and why are they pushing a narrative if this is not established? Why are they pushing that so hard? And they're trying to push that into circles. Look, if there's a counter revolution, you don't miss a counter revolution, right? When the Soviet Union fell, it was pretty obvious, and that generally is true. When Libya was overthrown, it was pretty obvious. You don't have a revolution, a counter revolution, where the entire economic system of a country is completely changed and no one notices. And again, if she is indeed dismantling their anti-imperialist economy, we'll know. It'll be obvious. And also there will probably be civil war in Venezuela, because the military is trained in Cuba, because the military are more supportive of the government than the population overall is. And if indeed, right now in Venezuela, they're having almost daily rallies to support Maduro. Delcy Rodriguez is visiting the communes that are like the base of the Bolivarian Revolution and discussing the situation. And, the USA has lifted some sanctions and is allowing them to sell oil to the United States in exchange for, different things. At the same time, they're being threatened. At the same thing, Delcy Rodriguez is also indicted, the same as Maduro, and they're basically telling her, we can kidnap you at any time. This is not a good situation for Venezuela. They have a gun to their head. They're not doing what they would like to be doing, but it's not a full counter-revolution. And it's bizarre. On the one hand, I hear leftists repeating that. On the other hand, so I don't know. It's frustrating. We did go to the jail where Maduro was being held, and we were there almost a week after he was taken, right? We had our team was in New York City for our event, and we went right to the jail, right, where Maduro was held. We went right to that jail, and I've noticed other groups, they did something there for International Women's Day, and that's good. I mean, I'm glad that anyone is speaking up against, Maduro and Celia Flores being held, but, we were there. We had a rally, and we have taken our position, and it's just I don't know. It's I don't know. I don't know what more to say about it. It's just, look, we're doing our own thing. The left sucks, and I don't want to make that a mantra, and I talk about that too much on here. But the left sucks. I mean, it just completely sucks. And everyone wants unity until that means treating other people with respect. They all want unity. Oh, they all want unity. Oh yeah, we want unity. And unity means you sit there and watch us and clap for us when we speak. That's what unity means. Well, no, that's not what unity means. And we at CPI, we always open up our platforms to people from other organizations. We're always polite, and we always are willing to work with people. But the left is, and we're not begging for a place in leftism. We stopped doing that a long time ago. The People's Conference for Palestine happened. What did we do? Noah and I drove there with thousands of Houthi books, and we went into the conference, and we distributed them in the conference, and then they kicked us out. And then we took them to the hotels that were reserved for the conference and left them in the hotels. And we took them to a local Islamic center that is Shia Muslim. That's an anti-imperialist Islamic center in there. And we gave it to them. And then we drove back to New York. And that's it. And other people went there and, begged for a position and wanted to take selfies with, I forget who it was. Who was the influencer, the Hassan Piker or whatever? No, we knew this was enemy territory. We went in, we distributed our book, and we got out of there. And our book is a great work of anti-imperialism. Read our Houthi book. The fact that we have distributed that book in bulk, I am so proud of our book on the Houthis. Our book, Who Are the Houthis and What Are They Fighting For, is a great, great anti-imperialist piece of writing. And the fact that we've distributed that all over the country as a way to stand with the Houthis, I think about, these people that are anti-imperialists, right, or claim to be, and they hate us, right? It's name one other group that is out in the streets with big banners of Ibrahim Traore, promoting Ibrahim Traore. Name one. I don't know any other group that has done that. Name one group that has written a book about the Houthis of Yemen and distributed in bulk, trying to build up consciousness among the American people to stand with the people of Yemen. Name one group that did more to support the Uhuru movement than we did. We were right there with the Uhuru movement, standing with the Uhuru movement. I mean, CPI, name one group that organized an American delegation to go to the World Youth Festival. Name one group that had a UN press conference sponsored by the Russian mission in which we talked about the Uhuru movement. We have done so much. And if people don't like us, That's why. And that's the sad thing. These people, it's like the more you do for the causes these idiots believe in, the more they hate you, right? They can't ever say, wow, you did something good. You know, Brian McGinnis. Is Brian McGinnis part of CPI? No. He's part of the Green Party. He's a guy, a former U.S. Marine, current U.S. Marine. I guess you're always a Marine. So he's a Marine from South Carolina. He's in the Green Party. He goes and disrupts Congress, right? Great. We put a statement on. I mean, he's a hero, and we need that kind of anti-war disruption right now. We wrote an article, you know, salute to Brian McGinnis, right? Now, you know, that's great. We don't know him. We don't care, right? But here's the thing. If Brian McGinnis had been in a communist group, right? I mean, if he wasn't just a Green Party guy, if he'd been in a communist group, he would have done that, and all the other communists that weren't in his group would have all dumped on him. All right. And that's why I don't want to be a communist anymore. If Brian McGinnis was a member of PSL, he would have done it, and PSL would have blasted it out everywhere. And then everybody who's not in PSL would have gone, oh, fuck that. And you know, and that's just the culture, right? And I'm sick of it. I'm really sick of it, right? And CPI is a great example of that. We have done more for anti-imperialism. I have done a lot for anti-imperialism, right? I risked my life on a ship to Yemen. I've video recorded African-American women getting beaten up by the police and got them acquitted in court. My record as an anti-imperialist activist is a mile long, but none of that matters. Nope. I'm a white supremacist. He's a white nationalist. He's a white nationalist. One of these idiots was on Twitter, a guy with a fairly big socialist account, explained that I was a white nationalist. And I said, how am I a white nationalist? I just started linking all my activism. Well, you know, but you're just like this other person. I said, I'm not that person. Right. That person doesn't even like me. I have nothing to do with it. Oh, we'll do it. You know, and it's just like, you know, and that's why I'm not a communist anymore. That's why I'm an innovationist. Their movement is based on resentment and confrontation and struggle and all of that. And so that's why they can't ever be happy for anyone else's accomplishments. That's why they're constantly resentful. That's why it's all a big competition. That's why, you know, and it's just not, I'm not in it for that. And I don't want to build an organization with that kind of culture. And, you know, I am an anti-imperialist, but I am motivated by my faith in God. I am motivated by my belief that it's worth it. And that, you know, the sacrifices that all of us have made, you know, mean something for a higher purpose. Right. And, you know, I think about John Brown, and I think about Harriet Tubman and the Black Panthers, and I think about Eugene Debs, and, you know, I feel a very, very spiritual attachment to anti-imperialism, but the left movement is toxic. I mean, it's just completely toxic. And, you know, I guess I'm feeling those feelings more because I've had to be around these people a lot more, because I've been covering anti-war protests, and I've had to see them and see how, and they all know who I am, and, you know, and I have to deal with that. And so it's got me kind of bitter, honestly. But at the end of the day, I mean, it just reminds me why we have to build CPI. And there you go. You know, and it's like, so I don't know. We live in very frustrating times. It's a hard time to be an anti-imperialist. You know, if you're constantly going around saying, no, we don't need war, and doing everything you can to boost a peace message, and then a war happens, that doesn't feel good. I mean, there's no way to pretend that the way things are right now is not awful, right? You know, I wish we have to be hopeful, and we have to be optimistic, and it is our organization and our movement that gives me that hope and optimism. And that's what we have to just focus on, because at the end of the day, you know, at the end of the day, only a movement is going to change this. Recently, somebody came to me, somebody I respect, and they said, well, why is the focus on building a movement, not building some kind of secret group that can infiltrate the establishment? And I said, because the only way you're going to be able to push back the power of the elite is to have a mass movement behind you. And the elite know that. And that's why they're building their own mass movements, to fight each other. And it's through that process of them creating counter gangs and building mass movements of their own that people learn to be politically active and then begin to assert their own agenda. And that, let's say you snuck an anti-imperialist into the Trump administration. Well, if there was nobody in the streets supporting them and public opinion was solidly against them and they were secretly behind the scenes being anti-imperialist, that wouldn't change anything. It's popular power and mass movements. They're the only thing that have ever changed anything. And I know that that's missing from a lot of people's consciousness. People don't have awareness about the labor movement. People don't have awareness about how the civil rights movement was actually waged. People think the civil rights movement was Martin Luther King gave a speech one day. Well, no, there was a lot of people going to freedom schools and getting trained in the art of civil disobedience and then strategically going to places and getting the crap beaten out of them, and getting arrested over and over and over again. You read about the freedom summers that went on, right? You read about the unemployment movement. I mean, mass movements change the world. And a lot of people don't know that. And that's, I see that continuously. People saying that, they think that what we need to do is we need to find the perfect person and vote for them. That is the sentiment that I see everywhere. Well, no, we need to build a movement. And when there's a movement, the people that are running for office will have to address what it's saying and they'll have to compromise with it. But if there's no movement, you can have somebody saying the best thing ever. And, and Trump did say a lot of great things about wanting to end the wars, and he didn't mean a word of it. He was lying. Well, we did our best to try and build energy in the streets supporting the peace aspects of Trump's campaign. And that was the right thing to do. And if more people had done that, who knows, right? Trump may have governed very differently. But Trump got into office, and it looks like Marco Rubio set his foreign policy. And Tulsi Gabbard I think Tulsi Gabbard has been forced into the background. I don't know if I see people saying she should resign, and that makes sense to me. But then, I don't know. I don't know what I would do if I was her. And honestly, she's never had my worldview. She does support Israel, right? I'm not Tulsi Gabbard. I don't have Tulsi Gabbard's perspective. And, but, at the same time, this is everything Tulsi Gabbard said should never be happening. So unless she has just completely abandoned her principles, she's got to be back behind the scenes seething. And this is a nightmare. This is an absolute nightmare situation. And as I said in the opening, I don't know how this ends, right? Trump says it's going to end soon. Okay. I hope so. I hope so. But, how does it end? What is Iran supposed to just say? Oh, you killed our supreme leader. Okay. We'll open up the Straits of Hormuz. Our bad. Yeah, we'll call it off. And of course they're not going to do that. Right? This is Iran has to fight with everything they've got, or else they lose credibility as a country. You can't do this. This is one thing. This is a lot of people. Trump isn't the only one who doesn't get this. If you attack somebody, they're going to fight back. Right? And that's a lot of people. This is like the cry bully phenomenon. They seem to not understand that they just think I can just push on people. And the second they push back, oh my God, why are you such an asshole? Well, there you go. And it's just, and it's somehow Iran is the aggressor now. Iran is being bombed. And so they're shooting the bases that bomb them. Right? Like, what are they supposed? There was a moment in mainstream media where the Iranian foreign minister had to explain that to the American, the American host. And the host said, why are you attacking U.S. military bases? He said, because those bases are shooting missiles at us. That's why, it's hard to understand. And this applies to my own situation, right? I have been defamed. I have been smeared by the left. The communist groups have said awful, unforgivable things about me. They've defamed me. the amount of vicious, personal character assassination I've been subjected to, but yet, I respond and call them out. And oh my God, you're such a bad person. You're being so mean. Well, whatever happened to, I don't agree with this person. Like, whatever happened to that? Whatever happened to, I don't agree with you? Like, whatever happened to that, right? You don't have to call anybody a Nazi. You don't have to defame anyone's personal character. You don't have to allege that someone's secretly part of a white supremacist. You don't have to advocate violence and murder against somebody. How about I disagree with you, right? You know, I disagree with you about the trans thing. I disagree with you about Trump. I disagree with you about that. Okay, we agree about Iran. We agree about Uhuru. We agree about this. Whatever happened to that? You know, why can't anyone, none of these fucking leftists can just disagree with you? And it's never a matter of the issues. It's always just this personal, well, the internet says you're bad. You know, it's funny. Yeah. Are you surprised? Right. And it's like these people all claim to agree with me about foreign policy, but they're not prominent. I am. And I've been subjected to character assassination by people who don't agree with them. Has it ever occurred to them that, like, maybe by going after me, they're working and helping Mossad? Like, the campaign against me has gone after Mossad. Like, I don't know. I could complain about this all night, but it just gets old. And it really, at the end of the day, I mean, and I hate to say this, it's kind of like punk rock, right? I've never been a huge punk rock fan. I listened to the Clash a little bit. I like, you know, Clampdown and London's Burning and, you know, some of the Clash stuff, Clash City Rockers, and, you know, I like some Clash stuff. But other than the Clash, I've never really listened to much punk rock. But one thing they talked about punk rock is that you would be a fan of a punk rock band, and then they would become popular, right? They'd start selling albums, and then all their fans would say, "Oh, they sold out," because they want it to be their little thing. They want it to not have shows that have thousands of people there. They want it to be a tiny little show that they get to go to, and they get to feel special, like it's their little band that no one's ever heard of. And then when that band has a record that actually, you know, they sign a major record label and their audience is suddenly hundreds of people coming to their shows, it's no longer your little band anymore, right? And so suddenly you hate them. And that's how communist politics is, you know, anti-imperialist politics is in America, right? Everybody hates anybody who gets anything done. And it's the same thing for libertarians. Look at the tweets of Angela McArdle, right? She talks about the same thing. Any libertarian who gets anything done immediately becomes subject to character assassination, and all libertarians hate them. And it's the same on the far right, right? And what's interesting is there's a layer of shock jocks created in all the dissident spaces now who are part of this too, right? There are a lot of people on the right that are nationalists, that are far right, you know, and then there's Nick Fuentes, right? And Nick Fuentes is not part of any organization. He's not doing any activism. He's just this smart ass piece of crap, you know, but all kinds of people on the right that have done real organizing, they get their character assassinated, they get, you know, demonized. But then Nick Fuentes, he's just this shock jock who just gets blown up everywhere. And the same thing happened in libertarian circles, right? Angela McArdle is the head of the Libertarian Party, is organizing demonstrations, making deals with the Republican Party, and she's an important figure. And, you know, they character assassinate her and all this. But then there's these people on the internet, you know, Spike Cohen and people like that talk trash, and they're internet famous, and they all hate Angela, and, you know, and they mobilize libertarians. The same thing happens in our circles. You know that. BreadTube was that, right? These people that never organized anything, right? And they then mobilize their audience to character assassination and hate everyone who actually organizes anything. This is how they're controlling dissent, right? And they're manipulating the algorithms. And it's unfortunate. And then it doesn't help that the activism spaces are full of jealousy. They're full of long-standing rivalries and jealousies. And, you know, and so you throw that into the hopper, and, you know, it's a mess. And that's why we want to recruit people who would never go looking for this. We want to recruit new people. That's what we're focused on, out of the movement to the masses. If somebody wants to join us, if someone trickles in from another activist space, great. That's fine. But that's not our focus. That's really not our focus. We want to reach the masses. That's who we want to reach. And, you know, at the end of the day, that's what we want to do, because that's all there is to it. I will say this. I just, you know, and this is a little bit niche, but I'll just throw it out there in case anyone in the audience knows anything about this. I really don't get, right, at this point, right? This is 2026, Why is anyone who's a Marciite not in PSL? You know, I mean, you want to talk about the ultimate losers out there, right? PSL is an awful group in a lot of ways, but you know, the Workers' World Party existed. 2004, Brian Becker walked away because he's a better businessman, a slick businessman, and he formed Party for Socialism and Liberation. And it's a pretty big group. And, you know, I mean, I don't agree with them, and I think they're a pretty awful group. But if that's what you believe, if you believe in tailing liberals and you have like an anti-imperialist mind, but your belief is to tail whatever the trendy liberal cause is, join PSL. But I really do not understand these losers in, I think it's called Struggle La Lucha, and the people that are still in the Workers' World Party after everything. And I think there's another breakaway in Detroit. Like, why are you doing that? Just join PSL, right? I mean, either do something different or join PSL. Like, why in the world would you form, you know, at this point, right? Maybe it made sense when Workers' World and PSL were kind of the same size. But at this point, PSL is huge and they do what you do. So why are you doing the same thing as PSL in a smaller group? Why? Like, do something different or do it with them, you know? And what it really is it's personal vendettas. They're all old and they didn't join PSL in 2004 because they had a personal spat. They don't like Brian Becker and he's not a very likable person. And so there's a personal back and forth. But when the Workers' World split was happening in 2017, I was out of the party. I'd been out of the party for 2 or 3 years, but I was still talking to people in the party. I heard all different sides of it. And the one thing that I just kept saying to all the people that I knew that were involved in it, I said, none of you are thinking. It's all just a fight over, you know, they just want to keep doing the same shit. Well, PSL is doing that shit, so just do it with them. I don't get it, right? Like, there was no thought going on in any of the split. It was just petty squabbling over egos. But none of them were thinking and questioning anything. It was like there's this permanent tactical orientation of tail the liberals, whatever the liberals are doing, we set up the stage and we get a permit and we have a rally around it. And then we have a newspaper with articles promoting it and also promoting North Korea and Cuba. And that's how we build a movement. And it's like, that is a failed strategy. And especially in our time now where a lot more anti-war sentiment exists on the right than on the so-called left. Not now because Trump is doing it. That's a whole nother complicated thing. But, you know, it's just that formula, you know, that's the movie network, right? The movie network, you know, where you have these edgy leftists but we're in a different time now, right? And the anti-imperialist countries are not woke, and woke people are tied in with, you know, active globalist activism. And that's just not going to work. So why in the world, right? Why in the world, you know, why in the world are people sticking to that strategy, not questioning that strategy? And then your organizations are all collapsing, right? You know, PSL is the main group doing that now. And then the Workers' World Party collapses and splits into like 3 different factions, and none of them question that strategy. And it's all just petty personal bullshit among old people who have known each other for 40 or 50 years and hate each other, and young people who will join like I did and will leave in 4 or 5 years. I mean, I stayed way longer than any of them. I was a member for 8 years. And these people, most of the young people that join these groups, they stay in a year or 2 years. And, you know, and like me, I mean, it's funny in a way, I am really lucky that I left before 2017, because when they collapsed in 2017, it got really, really ugly. Violence between members and extreme allegations and all kinds of stuff. I was out of there, you know, I left kind of on my own. And in a way, I mean, it was good that I left the way I did. But the reason I left was basically the group wasn't functional and they had no strategy. And the world, I was coming to understand the world didn't match their worldview. And on top of that, my career was advancing and they were all getting jealous of me. And they couldn't explain basic questions. And, you know, they just they didn't have answers. Their worldview is stuck in the 1980s, and the world out there was changing, and their worldview didn't match, and they were dysfunctional as a group, and so my career was taking off, and I really tried to leave on good terms, but there is no good terms. And then, but in a way, it's good I left then, because they went crazy afterwards, and they now, the cancel culture and all of that. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's really sad, what they've become. And I just, I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. And I wish I didn't have to see them, because I don't think like them anymore. I believe in God, and I don't hate the way they hate. I mean, their whole worldview is just resentment, jealousy, envy, and I just don't think that way anymore, and I do my own thing. And, I don't know. And you just have to do your own thing. And I don't know. I could go on about this all night, and it's probably not something I should talk about on these streams. What's happening in the world right now is hard for all of us. It really is hard for all of us. For all of us who believe in peace, for all of us who recognize that the Islamic Republic of Iran is a bastion of anti-imperialist resistance, seeing them just be bombed and attacked the way that they are being bombed and attacked, it's really hard, it's really hard. And, and then to have to then see the people that have been failing to build an anti-war movement, and seeing them, and, it's just, yeah, it's tragic. It's frustrating. But I keep going, and it's nice weather, and my wife and I, Matches is amazing. I am a really lucky man. I'll just tell you that much. My wife is an amazing person. She really, really is. And she was never a communist, right? They wanted to recruit her, but she was never a communist. She's a great person, and she's done a lot of activism for domestic workers, and she's done a lot of activism for immigrants, but she was never a communist, and that's good. And that's great, actually. And, my wife and I, it was nice weather. We took a walk around the neighborhood. We ate some ice cream, and you just got to chill. I mean, what else can you do, right? And you got to think about our community. And that's why I made that video today. I sat down and I said, that video where we have this little light of mine, it's a little bit outdated, right? It's older images of CPI. So I clipped together some newer clips of it. And I thought that was great. And yes, Swine Class has met my wife. My wife is great. She's got a laugh that is unique. It's like a trademark, her laugh, right? People say that they watch events on a live stream and they hear her laugh and they know that she's in the audience because her laugh is so unique. I mean, Matches is really, really special. And, I look at the world, and, I met a lot of great people, and we have a lot of great people. I mean, I think about Noah, I think about Dan in LA, I think about Penny, I think about Gabby, I think about Briggy, I think about, our members. There are just so many great, great, great people among our membership. Mike out in Portland, and, John, who can forget John? John is amazing. And John is so dedicated and a really wise person who's been around a long time and knows how to work in organizations. And I could start naming off members and I'll forget somebody and I'll hurt some feelings. And so I need to stop doing that, because there's just so many great people in CPI. We have good people. And that's the thing. That's why I don't care about view counts anymore, right? If we can recruit one person who's like one of these great people I'm mentioning, one great organizer, that's far more valuable than if we got 100,000 or 1 million views on a video. It wouldn't matter. If we can attract one great organizer, that's worth it, right? And I think about the people who've joined our group who have stepped up and really believe in the cause and are loyal, right? And are not going to back down in the face of anything. And I think about the Innovationist Turn and the Khrushchevism campaign and all of that. Look, we got to just be door in your face. We've got to be door in your face. That's kind of why I was reading from this book. There's a lot in this book, but that section I was reading you about the neocons, right? I mean, the neocons couldn't even be good Trotskyites, right? Because they had this hang up of, I think for myself, and they didn't have party patriotism. And that if you're going to have an organization, you have to have organizational loyalty. You have to have party patriotism. These people, these people that have left our group, they don't have it, but our members do, right? But you have to have that, right? And that the Khrushchevism campaign, we are functioning in a way that we recruit serious people. And, we have some new members who've just joined. Robert in New Jersey is a new member. He's doing great work. And we got some plans for activities towards the end of the month. We're going to intervene in some activities that are going on. And it's kind of a new orientation because the Democrats are kind of against this war, and public opinion, especially among Democrats, is against this war. And so it's kind of a new orientation. We've kind of been avoiding the left, but, in a way, we just have to just be ourselves, right? We're not going to join the leftist mess, but we're going to do our own thing. But we do want to talk to people that would consider themselves left critics of Trump. And so we're figuring out how we fit into things, but we got people that are dedicated. I mean, the leaflet that we made for our CPI mobilization on February 28th, I didn't make that leaflet. That leaflet was made by our member in New York, Irving, and he did a great job with it. It was a great leaflet. We got hundreds of them out in New York, hundreds of them out around the country. It's a great leaflet with our 4-point plan on it and all that. We've got a good group of people here, and we're heading toward the convention this summer, August 15th. If you were at the last convention, you're in this book because we published a whole full color book of the convention with all the speeches transcribed, the Q&A transcribed, all kinds of material. And we're going to do that again this year. There's just going to be way more pictures in this year's version of it, just so you know, because there's not enough pictures in this. But yeah, every year we're going to put out a book just showing what we do. And, I don't know, some other groups have been publishing articles on their website, good for them. That's great. Well, we publish articles on our website too, and that's important, but we also do real organizing. We got to build a community of people. And, I don't know. I do feel like we're in this war is realigning American politics in a way that is going to be interesting. It's going to be very, very interesting. So that's one thing about us. We're not in a rut. CPI, we're the Center for Political Innovation. We change our tactics and we change the way we present ourselves, and we change to win, and we should be prepared to do that. But right now we have a good group of people who are dedicated to the project, and we have an optimistic vibe. We sound nothing like communists. We sound like constructive, optimistic people. We just had a great event in New Jersey in January. Shout out to everyone who was there. And we're going to have a great event this summer at our national convention, August 15th. And I'm looking forward to it. So on that note, folks, I guess we should probably wrap this up. It's funny. Lately I've been getting on here and saying it's going to be a short stream tonight. It's going to be a short stream tonight. It ends up being 3 hours. But I just have to tell you that it's times like these that we need the organization more than ever. It's the times when it's hard, right? When the world seems to be going in the opposite direction of how we want, when we're just frustrated, that's when we need the organization. And don't forget it, right? You don't need the organization when it's easy. You need the organization when it's hard. And that's what we need to remember, right? The organization is the most precious thing. And it's in times like these that we need the organization to function as a vehicle to spread anti-imperialism and to support each other and try to bring a message of hope and optimism. And we're about to kick off a new outreach campaign. The details of that will be made public soon. We're in the process of getting some great work done. So, all right, everybody, be in touch. I'm going to have to put on the closing music now. Yeah, I hope everyone has a great night. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow night, probably late if we do it tomorrow night. And we'll probably do it tomorrow night, but late. So here we go.
New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.